Check, check, check. Looking good. Okay, thanks everyone that'll be watching live now or will be watching in retrospect. Just to let you all know, this is very short notice for me because my work schedule's been crazy. So, and I have stuff to do. Believe it or not, I have a wife that sometimes likes to spend time with me. Plus 2 moron dogs. I got yard work and stuff like that. So this is not the most prepared video I'll ever do. However, thankfully I'm just like a super genius and I come up with all this stuff on the top of my head. No, not really. Thankfully, the Democrats are so corrupt with their media allies that there's never anything short of talking about. So I hope everyone enjoys my clever pun with the ever-shifting narrative. Most people want to go with shift as rhyming with a different word that I wasn't going. But I stuck to the shift term. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about today. So I'm going to be doing live streams probably tomorrow and Saturday as well. But what I really wanted to focus on today was Adam Schiff himself and what's going on specifically with his situation. Now, let's start back at the beginning of the Russiagate situation. Schiff was kind of the arch nemesis of Nunes. Nunes was, in my opinion, correctly showing that there was all sorts of corruption going on. And a lot of what he said in his memo and stuff was deemed, oh, it was untrustworthy. Oh, it was a big nothing burger. But it wasn't. The media said that. The same media, by the way, which I'll get into later here, always says that. They never take anything seriously. And so we're supposed to believe in the public narrative that because the media and because people like Schiff and the Democrats say something that must make it true. But it's not. And you can see a lot of the stuff I was saying back at the beginnings of the Russiagate and the Spygate situation. I kept trying the shoe on the other foot test, which is, okay, what if it was Trump doing this? What if it was a Trump administration or people left over from the Trump administration doing this to a Democrat? How would you feel? And, people lied to me. Oh, I wouldn't care. Nothing shady's going on here. And so Schiff was one of those people. So what ended up happening was, thanks basically to Schiff, at one point Nunes basically took some of this evidence he saw and went to the White House with it. And, oh, that's ridiculous. He's too involved now. And so Schiff had to step down from his place on the Intel Committee, even when the Republicans had control of the House. And now that's the same position Schiff occupies. Well, we've seen in case after case now that Schiff is directly involving himself in stories. So, for example, in the testimony of Michael Cohen, who was Trump's former lawyer, and remember, what they do is they control the narrative. They have all of the intel, all of the powerful is on their side, just about. Check out the new preview for the new Clint Eastwood movie. It's about Richard Jewell. For those of you that don't know the story of Richard Jewell, it was like the 96 Olympics in Atlanta. There was a bomb threat, and this heavy-set security guard, Richard Jewell, was basically accused of being the one that planted the bomb, and all the media and the FBI was, yeah, you're guilty, and it turns out he wasn't. Well, the tag for the preview, the big line is, his lawyer basically saying, he's going against the most powerful people in the world, the media and the FBI. That's exactly right. And that's what we see today. The difference is they had no incentive to hate Richard Jewell other than he was a convenient villain and they chose him first. With Trump, they hate. They hate his policies. They hate what he stands for. They hate that he's the avatar or the physical manifestation of how people feel that have been mistreated by the intel communities and the elites and the media for so many years. So that's what Trump is. Plus, he has the ability to out how corrupt they are, potentially. And so for all of those reasons, they hate Trump, and that's why they're going after him. And so you see Schiff's been involved with this. So with the situation with Cohen, for example, they go after him nonstop. Okay, the world goes, you don't know. The average person at home, they don't know what's going on. They just hear, oh man, possibly the president and all these people connected to him are these really corrupt people that possibly were Russian stooges. Yeah, investigate. And that's how the public would feel. That's how I feel. Again, if you're watching this video, you have to understand you're probably a little different than the average member of the public. I'm certainly different than the average member of the public in that I'm a nerd and I have free time. It's not that I'm smarter or I'm better than anyone. Like my parents, it's not that I'm smarter or better than them. They just have a life. They don't have time to do this. I do this because I have the time. I was blessed to kind of have an ability to think through this stuff. And, I enjoy it. Other people have different hobbies. Other people are working 60, 70 hours a week. But you talk to those average people, and I don't care if they lean right or left, and what they'll tell you is basically the system's corrupt. No one in Washington cares about them, and they're right. I mean, it's more nuanced than that. There could be specific people that are okay, that are looking out for you. But in general, if everyone in Washington was replaced tomorrow, if everyone in the mainstream media was replaced tomorrow, it would be a net win for the country, for sure. And people know that. Now, you could BS them. You could throw your comedians out there. You could throw everyone in Hollywood out there, every rapper out there, all the professors, everyone in the media, all your Mark Zuckerbergs. You could have them all telling the same story. No, it's not like that. But people know in their gut. They know. Right? So when it came to all this, Russia stuff with Trump that people like Schiff were pushing, probably, right? That's what they think. Probably Trump's guilty of something. He's a billionaire. I kind of feel the same way myself. I felt that if they went through any billionaire's financial records with a fine-tooth comb, they would find evidence of some crime. Not just Trump, that's any billionaire. Or if you go through anybody's personal lawyer's notes that's made it at the highest levels of Washington, you'd probably find evidence of some sort of crime. That's what this was from the get-go with the Democrats, with Schiff, with the intelligence community. There's our man, he's guilty, now let's find the crime. And that's why they just want excuses to dig further. That's what this impeachment deal's about. Oh, impeachment, it's a big deal. The whistleblower, he came out and said something. It must be true. It must be true. We need to see everything. Because their feeling is, if we can see everything, we'll find something that makes him look guilty. And even if we don't, we can find something that we know that all of our allies in the entertainment industry and academia and Silicon Valley and the media will spin it as guilt. That's what it's about. But the average person's just like, yeah, probably. Trump probably did something. So they weren't really freaking out with the Russia investigation with someone like me that was like, this is the biggest political scandal in the history of the country. People try to bog you down in, did you ever watch the movie JFK, right? Kevin Costner movie. Oliver Stone, I think, directed it. And he's got this famous speech. He's playing a lawyer that's kind of looking into the JFK assassination. And there's this famous speech he gives towards the end of the movie where they're talking about the magic bullet theory, that this bullet turned 4 times. That was the government, supposedly that was the government's theory. And Costner says, the government will tell you that this is possible, but the government will tell you with mathematics that it's possible for an elephant to hang off a cliff with its tail tied to a daisy. Something that, I'm butchering that, but the general idea is correct. You could confuse someone with enough little details that you could throw little lies in there that makes people be like, oh, okay. By the way, that's our entire economic system, right? When you look at the 2008 financial crisis, let me just fill you in case you didn't know. Yes, there's a lot of nuance you can go into it, but here is the end of the story. A bunch of corrupt bankers decided that they were going to take a bunch of risks with your money. And every time those risks paid off, they got wealthy. And every time they didn't pay off, you bailed them out as a taxpayer. And those were criminal risks, and none of them got punished. Now, you could listen to one of these people. You could listen to Jamie Dimon or someone from that sector come in and tell you I'm going to give you a 3-minute speech that talks about the ins and outs of specific investment and, mortgage-backed securities and the ratings and all this stuff. And the average person's just like, wait, what? No, it's a simple story. A bunch of greedy, wealthy people stole your money. That's it. They can try to justify it all they want. It's the same crap here. And you can see you can see what's going on if you just see the bigger picture and if you know what's been going on for years. I voted for Donald Trump. Number one reason, I wanted to see a Trump-Bernie election because I felt that the establishment on both sides felt that those two were potential outsiders. Now, Bernie's since sold out. By the way, I'll say here, which I put a tweet out about it, but I did not do a video, and I mean this with the utmost sincerity. I do not like socialism. I do not like the policies of Bernie Sanders. I also think that he's a hypocrite, and he seeks to have government force you to do what he's unwilling to do personally. Like he lives in gated communities with 3 houses, while he yells at you that you need to accept illegal immigrants, and you need to change your light bulb, and you're the problem with climate change, and other people have too much money, etc. However, I wish Bernie, honestly, a full recovery. I hope he gets back into his campaign, and I'm not just saying that because I think his positions would help my side. I really mean that. I don't, unlike a lot of these establishment Democrats that just want to impeach Trump, I actually want to beat them at the polls. I don't want, a health reason to be the reason someone comes down. So I truly mean that. And I also am a firm believer that with very few exceptions of people that are actually physically responsible for the murder or deaths of people, I don't wish death or ill will on anyone, even if I disagree with them. So, I sincerely wish him a full recovery. But I think he sold out after the 2016 election. But going into it, and look, I'll have people argue with me. Well, Trump wasn't a real outsider. He's a businessman. And Bernie's not an outsider. It doesn't matter. They don't have to be outsiders. I think Trump is an outsider. despite his wealth. But I don't have to prove that. All I have to prove is that I think the establishment thought he was an outsider. In other words, here's someone they couldn't control. And people have said this for years. I can't remember who I read that said that the only chance we have to out corruption would be for an independently wealthy person to run for office and get it. And the reason is because, and I know as someone who's tried to run for Congress, it's damn near impossible without huge sums of money. And so if you're someone like me that doesn't have huge sums of money, what are your choices? Well, one, lose. That was my choice. Or second, you get money from people. But the problem is it's really hard to turn people down. Once they give you money and they get that in, they're trying to buy influence. That's difficult. So Trump was the best shot. You couldn't just buy him off because he already had a bunch of money. And it was evident from the way he was campaigning. He was saying stuff that the elites didn't want to hear. He's talking about immigration. Now, for all the, by the way, you should check out the videos I did with Operation Border Command. I got to talk to their producer, Dustin, who I think is a really great guy. He's going to be trying to set up more meetings with independent content providers like me and others. So look forward to that in the future. It'll be good. But anyways, ask them. Ask the people there. Ask the people whose the border is their number one issue. What did the Republicans or Democrats do for years before this? Nothing. Because at the top, you hear me say this all the time, at the top levels, at the real establishment, whether it's Republican or Democrat, they always agree on the big issues. Immigration, they don't want anything done about it. Bailing out bankers, yep, they both agreed. Foreign regime change wars, yep, they both agreed. Yeah, they'll fight over gay rights or abortion. That doesn't affect their pocketbook. So they leave us fight over that stuff while they're doing all this corrupt stuff at the top. Bernie and Trump represented something that could possibly break that stranglehold on power. That's why you see so many never-Trumpers like your Bill Kristols or your Jeff Flakes or your John McCain's or your Paul Ryans, Mitt Romney's, right? They would have rather had Hillary win than Trump, of course. They slipped up. The establishment slipped up. That's what I wanted to see. I could not believe it. I actually couldn't because I'm so cynical. Election night, my mouth was agape. I was so excited that Trump actually won because I just assumed they'd screw him over. They have that power. Look at the power they have now. How they could lie, and I'll get to some of these specific lies that they're telling. But with that sort of power, like, it's amazing that they lost that election. Absolutely amazing. And so, you look at what they did. When Trump came in and, he was saying about immigration. Or he was saying, why are we conflicting with Russia and Syria? Aren't they basically fighting Al-Qaeda? Haven't we been saying as a country since 9/11 that was the big existential threat to us? That's why you got to get felt up when you go through the airport. That's why the NSA has to listen to all your calls, right? It's because Al-Qaeda. Because they're these big, they're a big threat. You sold that to the American people. We bought it. Not all of us. I was upset about the Patriot Act and the erosion of our Fourth Amendment rights. But you sold it to us. Now you tell us, you have to do all that. You have to lose all your Fourth Amendment rights. But the same people that you have to lose those rights because we're fighting, we're going to arm in Syria because Assad's a bad guy. I'm sure Assad is a bad guy. What's he ever done to you? So we got to arm the people that flew planes into our towers, or the same groups, the same ideology, to fight some guy because of oil interest in Russia? Sorry, not buying it. Neither was Trump. He said that in the second debate. Now, to my disappointment, Trump surrounded himself with people like John Bolton and other warmongers that I think pushed him to attack Syria and other things like that. And I think that's a mistake. That's one thing I'll criticize Trump about. But that mentality, it was like, yes, that's why I'm voting for this guy. Because he is seen as someone, the establishment is frightened of him. Because they know that they don't have your interest at heart as the average person. And I say that to all my friends that are watching. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, what your issue is. They don't care about you at all. At all. They care about power for themselves, and they care about issuing propaganda to you to maintain that power. That's it. That's all they care about. They'll say what they have to. They'll shift with the winds with public opinion to maintain their power, but they don't want a real challenger. I mean, go back and look. I'm going to butcher the dates because, like I said, I do apologize to everyone watching because my work schedule has been crazy. There's been a lot of people taking vacation time, and the nature of my work is when I go into work, I'm there 24/7 and at a block shift because it's home health care. So sometimes I'll go into work on a Sunday and I don't get back till Friday. So because I have a life, I finally got off work today, and I got stuff to do with my wife later tonight. So this is short notice. But go back, I think it was 1988. So, oh, God. Let me see if I can remember this. It was like the League of Women Voters or one of these women's groups. They used to actually put on the debates since, I believe, the time of the famous Nixon JFK debate. They put on these public debate. They were always the ones that did the debates, would host them. And they basically dropped out in the late 80s, I believe, because the Republicans and Democrats came together and were like, we don't want a third party. And the League of Women Voters was like, we don't want any part of this. Because they were legitimately nonpartisan. They were like, we just want the voices to be heard. And so when the Republicans and Democrats came together and were like, we don't want anyone else on the stage, they backed out. They were like, then we're not going to have any part of this. And that's been the way it's been ever since. You know, that's why when you see a third party like Ross Perot spring up, it's unusual. You know, someone else outside the system sprung up. Now, again, I'm not saying I'm a Republican, so don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to condemn all Republicans or all Democrats. I'm talking at the elite levels, the highest levels of what's really going on behind the scenes. It's those people, it's the unelected bureaucrats in the deep state and in the intel community that we see. It's the globalists like the Zuckerbergs, these big globalist corporations that want to stop nationalism. It's the same groups you see that are backing the EU. Do you ever notice every time there's an election that goes against the globalist, they can't accept the results of the election? Do you ever notice that? Trump gets in, they can't accept that. You know, I saw on Twitter today a Washington Post article the day after Trump won saying the impeachment process begins. They knew. It's the least kept secret in Washington. They're going to bring this guy down by any means necessary. They did not accept him. By the way, as always, the exact same things they do, they accuse you of, and they accuse Trump of. Remember when they said for 6 months, oh, Trump doesn't accept the results of the election. Places like the Washington Post were saying that, right? Oh, it'll tear the fabric of this country about it. First day he's elected, they're writing, begin the impeachment process. Oh, yeah. It was Trump and his crew you had to worry about accepting the results of the election. So we put up with this crap. He finally gets in there. And I'm laughed at, right? Deep state. I had friends tell me this. Deep state. Hey, Rob, stop saying the word deep state. You look like a lunatic. Sorry. You got a better word for it? Thank you, Grant. Thanks. I had a lot of fun doing it. But do you have a better word for it than deep state? What would it be? You know, one of the problems as humans is we have a difficulty with labels. And if you saw that interview I did on the Border Command live stream, we talked briefly about framing arguments and about how the left and the establishment likes to control language. You know, so they'll say they have a problem with privilege. We'll get them to define that. What is the privilege? Or there's a problem with whiteness, or there's a problem with the patriarchy. You know, what does that mean? Yeah, I had this feminist class in college, and at this point, I was already a pretty good debater, so I debated feminists by people that were very, very, very into the literature, more so than this professor I had. And the professor starts telling us all the things that are wrong with masculinity. And she's telling us how it's better to raise a child in a feminine environment than a masculine environment. And I was like, can you define masculine and feminine? And she's like, yeah, masculine's like evil and abusive and violence, and feminism's nurturing and caring. And I was like, okay, so then the big statement you just made here was, it's good to raise a child well instead of not well. You just define the term masculine as everything bad and the term feminine as anything good. And then you play this trick where you know that the implication is masculine means man and feminine means woman. So later, a half an hour later, when you're making an argument, you could insert that in there real quick. That's the same thing that the left tries to do all the time, the establishment tries. It's sophistry. You know, that's why if you go back and you read the dialogues of Plato, when Socrates is talking, like, that's all Socrates is doing, basically, is defining terms. Once you get a stable definition of terms, it's easier to have the argument. I know I'm ranting a little here, but like I said, I don't care. This is going to be a ranty day. It's the same with all of these crimes they accuse Trump of. Oh, what Trump did with Russia was, you know, he's guilty of treason. You know, he should at least be removed from office, if not in jail. Well, what was it that he did with Russia? Can you define what the problem was? Well, yeah, you can't try to get dirt in your opponents from Russians. Okay, that's your definition. Yes. All right. He did not get dirt. He tried, possibly, through Don Jr. I'll give you that. But we know that Hillary Clinton's team actually did that. And then they say, no, that's different. Oh, take it easy, Grant, thanks. Why is it different? And you see, because when you don't staple them down on a definition, they'll keep going. So it's illegal for Trump to ask Ukraine for help in an election. Why? Where were the journalists before the transcript came out? I said it over and over. Why aren't there journalists asking these people, what exactly is the problem with getting evidence from possible crimes? Well, it was okay for Obama because those crimes were real. Mueller says not. You see what I mean? You see how the changing definitions, it allows them to do stuff like this? So when I say deep state, I understand that there's a negative connotation. And that is something that we, as people that don't buy into this mainstream media and their crap, and they're just kind of, narrative and propaganda that they spin, it's something that we have to work through. So when I say deep state, people will be like, well, who specifically do you mean? Or if I complain, I say the Democrats or the establishment. Who specifically do you mean? Well, I mean this. I mean anyone who is willing to engage in a coup to overthrow the President of the United States. When I say deep state, that's who I'm talking about. When I talk about the intelligence community people, that I'm talking about unelected bureaucrats that serve themselves and the power of the establishment more than the Constitution and the sitting president. Now, it's hard to say that every time, interject that every time I say deep state, but that's what I mean. Anyways, the point with all this is, I knew that's why I wanted Trump elected, and he got elected, and I was surprised. And yet I'm still told, after all of that, after Chuck Schumer comes out and is interviewed with Rachel Maddow and says, Trump better be careful. He better not insult or challenge the intel community in any way, because they'll find 6 ways to Sunday at getting back. How wasn't that statement enough to make everyone's jaw drop, regardless if you're Republican or Democrat? The most powerful elected official in the world has to be fearful of unelected bureaucrats. If he dares to go against their policies, they will take him down. That's what Chuck Schumer told you. Schumer's not, by no means is he a Trump sycophant. He despises Trump himself. He told us that. Where was everyone? Where were all the Democrats? They're okay with it. That's the truth. And remember, this is the same group, and I mean the exact same group. After the Iraq War, we were told, the Democrats, CNN, why does Fox still get smeared? Because they were seen as the group that always had George W. Bush's back. And so they got smeared. Bush lied, people died. And Fox News was right there with them. But the truth is that they're rewriting history. Because if you go back, it wasn't just Fox News. It was CNN, it was the New York Times, it was MSNBC, if they were around at the time. But at least NBC, all the major networks, everybody was on board with it. Everyone. Then when they were caught with their hand in the cookie jar, what did they say? We're so sorry. It wasn't our fault. Right? That was their claim. Next time, as journalists, we didn't do a good enough job. We had to really look at the situation, look at the evidence, instead of just relying on other people like intel agents or heads of countries, heads of state to tell us. We're sorry, it won't happen again. Remember? That's what they told us? Now, 15 years later, not only are they cheering on the intel community, but they're telling us, we're not going to look into them, and if you do, you're corrupt and you're hurting America. That's what they told us. Anytime Trump criticizes the intel community, or if you're someone who believes the conspiracy theories Trump's saying, you're hurting the country. What happened? Well, it's the same thing. Hey, let's just take it in a shorter time sample. Right? Foreign regime change wars is bad. I used to go to all these punk music festivals, Warped Tour. I'd go to Ozfest. Right? All these people that were into metal and punk that I was into, there were albums coming out. Punk Against Bush. Bruce Springsteen was rocking against the Iraq War. All of Hollywood was against it. Yeah, all my cool friends. Woo, we hate these wars, right? Remember Cindy Sheehan? You had all these people that were marching. End the war, right? It was like a Vietnam redux, except not as powerful or organic. But that was what was going on, right? And then Obama comes in and Nobel Peace Prize. More bombs dropped on more countries than any president before him. We're going to continue all the wars that Bush started. We're going to start some more. Name a country in the Middle East that Obama didn't bomb. It was the smartest thing the neocons could have ever done. Okay, let's take the same foreign policy and package it in this younger, good-looking black guy who's supposed to be hip and progressive. And what happened? Where's Hollywood? Where's Bruce Springsteen? Where's all the punk guys? Where's the punk against Bush guys? All of a sudden, they're pretty damn silent, aren't they? Huh. And then there's me standing in a field by myself like, hey, where'd all my friends go? I've changed. That's what they tell me. I've changed. And so it went from hating the intel community under Bush to basically ignoring them under Obama to now cheering for them to overthrow Trump. That's how far we've come in three presidents. And that's the group that wants to tell you that they're morally superior, that they know more than you, that you're a moron. Look, you might not have time to investigate and look at the literature and look at the reporting and find the information for yourself on every specific issue. But just know that those people that think that they're better than you are full of it. They didn't say word one. And like I said, you've watched some of my videos here in the past. I've been talking about this. They'll always admit to their lack of coverage or wrongdoing for their side after the fact. Yeah, you know what? We probably should have been harder on Bill Clinton. Oh, well. Yeah, maybe Obama did do some bad stuff. Oh, well, kids in cages. Yeah, we should have spoken up on Obama, but we didn't. But now it's a huge deal and impeachable. It's garbage. Don't believe them. Make them prove their claims. And I mean this for me, too. Okay? Anyone you're listening to, anytime they just say, yeah, that's debunked, that's a conspiracy theory, you should question that. And I mean anything. It may very well be a stupid conspiracy theory and be debunked. But you could be like, okay, well, that's not an argument. That's just an opinion. You have to actually give evidence or give, factual claims to prove that. So when you see the entire mainstream media saying Trump admitted to crimes on the phone with Ukraine, what crimes? Has anyone listed it? Show me the criminal code. Show me the code of the law that Trump broke. Just show it to me. Which one is it? What are you accusing? They started to say, a campaign finance violation. Okay, then how didn't Obama break those things? What was not Obama, when he's investigating Trump in 2016, was that not beneficial to his campaign? So is that a campaign? Well, no, his investigations were legitimate. He had good intentions for wanting to investigate. Do you start to see a theme with everything the establishment left does here? Right? How about this? Remember Trump, Make America Great Again? They were like, that's racist. That's a kickback. He's saying a kickback to the time of Jim Crow. That's what Trump's saying. And then you go back to 1996 and you're like, here's Bill Clinton at his rally saying, Make America Great Again. Well, Clinton liked black people, so that's different. That was a good slogan. They dig in the past, some guy, right? This Carson guy that was just being a philanthropist, raised a bunch of money for a hospital. They dig into his past. Oh, he told a bad joke when he was 16 on Twitter. So he needs to be canceled. Then when their guy does it, Trudeau's in blackface or something, well, that's different. That's garbage. By the way, my stance is I don't even care about Trudeau's blackface. I don't. At all. It's irrelevant. I don't like Trudeau. I would like to see him not elected. I didn't care that Northam wore blackface. I didn't want to see people kicked out for jokes or lose their jobs ever on the right or the left. Didn't want to see Kathy Griffin lose a job for the joke with the Trump 7. I don't care. If it's comedy I don't like, I just don't watch it. It's that simple. It's really hard to offend me anyways. I'm offended by bad comedy and bad movies. Like Blase was saying. That sucks, but I'm not going to suggest canceling anything. But it's every single thing. It's okay when they do it, but not when you do it. They could have a 3-year investigation into Trump. No stone unturned. Raiding his lawyer's office with FBI people with, guns drawn, coming in like ninjas or stuff, masks, bulletproof vests, dozens of them, raiding these houses in the middle of the night. Leaking stuff. President Obama could lax the regulations so that he knows that every agency in the U.S. will get it and it'll get leaked to the press. Obama, we had stories that he was going to foreign allies saying, beware of Trump, he might be connected to the Russians. They could unmask people. They could leak transcripts of his conversation, leak details of him all the time. None of it matters. Right? That's all cool because it was all for the greater good. When they were doing it, it was okay. Right? That's what they told you. Trump looks into one thing, Ukrainian election interference in 2016, and they lose their minds. You can't do that. Oh my God, that's abuse of power. And even smart people, like I watch Aaron Maté, who's a progressive who hates Trump, by the way, on the Jimmy Dore show, and he gets this wrong. I agree with him on most of the stuff. He was one of the most vocal people against the Russia witch hunt. But he claims that he thinks Trump asking for this information, he says it's okay to ask about election interference in 2016, but not about Biden. I disagree. For two reasons. One, why is it that the president of our country cannot investigate what could be a possible crime involving $1 billion U.S. tax dollars? $1 billion. First off, why in God's name are we giving $1 billion to the Ukraine anyways? Do we still have veterans without health care? Yep. Do we have an opioid crisis? Yep. Has the middle class basically not got a raise in 5 decades? Yep. We got people living on the street, and we're giving billions upon billions of dollars to other countries? Ridiculous. And they say, oh, it was a national security threat that Trump withheld that money. How? What was the threat? Do you recall when Trump withheld that money? Do you recall like sitting up at night like, oh my God, we didn't give Ukraine that money any day now. What's going to happen? I mean, it's just silly. It's stupid. But okay, whatever. $1 billion, that's what Biden threatened to withhold. Why wasn't that a national security threat? Well, his motives were pure. It was okay for him. There's evidence there that that's not the case. I ain't saying that that proves Biden's guilty. What I am saying is there's evidence to warrant an investigation. And when the past corrupt administration and his holdovers refuse to even accept evidence that the Ukrainian government is willfully trying to give us, I don't mind our president saying, I'm going to talk to their president about this. So why is it okay? What we're told by the left is this. It's okay for Obama to investigate potential election interference, but it wouldn't have been okay for Obama to investigate, like, say, if he heard that the Bush administration had extorted the Ukrainian government for personal benefit. Obama would not have been allowed to investigate that. That's what they're claiming? Because that could have hurt the Republicans in 2016, and therefore that would have been a personal benefit to Obama? That's really what we're claiming? Guaranteed, not one of these people that are hyperventilating would have said anything. And you know how I know? Because 3 Democratic senators sent a letter to the Ukraine asking for evidence against Trump. They mentioned the economic success of Ukraine. They mentioned that the Democrats would support and it'd be a shame if Ukraine changed their mind. The exact same thing they're accusing Trump of. Did you hear one of these people speak up? One of them? Did you hear Jake Tapper? How about Anderson Cooper? Adam Schiff? Did you hear any of them speak up? No, they're busy making excuses. Well, that was different. Wow. Well, because they didn't say quid pro quo. They didn't offer a threat. Yeah, neither did Trump. Okay, but there was stuff in the New York Times at the time about Ukraine maybe stopping their help. Yeah, there was stuff in the New York Times about the Biden situation right before Trump talked. Well, but Orange Man bad, and the Democratic senators are good, so it's okay. And then they're on their high horse. They act morally righteous. Did you see? Check out my video I did with, the audio sucks on it, I apologize. I was having trouble with my mic. But with Jake Tapper and Jim Jordan. I mean, Tapper plays this clip at one point of Mike Pence saying, oh, we can't accept foreign interference into our elections. And Tapper's just like, I can't believe that you no longer think that's true. I can't believe it, Jim Jordan. You know, and I like Jim Jordan, but how he didn't say, are you kidding me? Here, let me get my smartphone here and pull up this article from yesterday from your network, Jake Tapper, saying it was okay for 3 Democratic senators to try to get help investigating Trump in May of 2018. Which, by the way, CNN reported on at the time. Only their report wasn't, wow, it's incredibly shady that these Democratic senators are doing this. Their report was, yay, get Trump. Can you believe the Ukrainians were going to stop feeding evidence to the people looking into Trump? That's terrible. We shouldn't do business with them if they're not going to help us bring down Trump. By the way, if the media would have done their job, other than John Solomon, who's fantastic, we wouldn't need Trump to be talking to the president of the Ukraine. The evidence would have been made public by now, which would have forced the people to demand an investigation into Biden. I'm so sick and tired of seeing all these polls.
USA Today poll says that the plurality of Americans support an impeachment inquiry into Trump. When asked, do you think that there should be an impeachment inquiry for the President of the United States asking a foreign power for assistance to investigate his opponent, 53% of Americans say possibly.
How about this question? Do you think that we should have an investigation into a vice president that threatened to withhold 1 billion US tax dollars to a foreign country in order to force them to fire the prosecutor looking into his son's company? How about that question? You seen that one polled? USA Today doing that? How about CNN? Rosie O'Donnell put that poll up on Twitter? No, I didn't see that. Because 80% of people in our country probably, this is all they know. So wait, Trump asked some other country's leader if they could investigate Biden? Yeah, I guess that sounds shady. They don't hear, did you know Joe Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion until they fired the prosecutor looking into his son? Do you know his son was working for the very corrupt oligarch that Biden claimed to be upset wasn't being investigated hard enough? And was getting $50,000 a month? Did you know that? No, they don't know that. They just hear the media's garbage spin. And the media, when that is said, the media can't get away from it quick enough. Oh, that's a conspiracy. That's a debunked conspiracy theory. The conspiracy theory's been debunked. That's just Russian propaganda. That was a conspiracy theory. Everyone says that was debunked. It was a conspiracy theory. Says who? They all say it's a conspiracy. It's like, I live near Pittsburgh, rural Pennsylvania outside Pittsburgh, so I'm a Steelers fan. So it's like, if I go to a Steelers bar, and I'm like, I think Tom Brady's the best quarterback in the history of the NFL, and everyone's like, nah, it's Ben Roethlisberger. And I'm like, well, why? They played at the same time against the same competition. Brady's stats are way better. His touchdown-interception ratio is way better. His team's won more Super Bowls. Like, under what criteria are you saying Roethlisberger's better than him? And they say, well, my buddy Joe over there said Roethlisberger's better. And I'm like, oh, okay, Joe, what's your reason? And he says, well, Tim over there, he says Roethlisberger's better. And we just go around the whole bar, and everyone's like, yeah, Roethlisberger's better, so that's our proof, because we all say it. That's what the media does. Well, it was okay for Biden to want that guy fired because everybody said he was corrupt. Who? Well, the Atlantic Council. Oh, you mean a Soros-funded group that the CFO of CrowdStrike's on the board of? Well, okay, what about the IMF? Oh, Christine Lagarde that runs that was at George Soros' wedding? A bunch of Obama and Soros allies said this guy was corrupt, so get rid of him? You think that'd fly if it was Trump? Well, Trump threatened $1 billion to, withhold $1 billion from the Ukraine unless they stopped investigating Don Jr.'s company. But it's cool. Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh said it was cool. Boris Johnson in the UK said it was cool, so you think that would be acceptable? You're a journalist. Investigate. How many videos have I done on John Solomon's awesome reporting? Sworn affidavits from the prosecutor saying, I was told I had to go because I wouldn't bury the investigation into Biden's son. Biden's son's company's own attorneys. Memos from the interim prosecutor that says, these attorneys told me. They basically knew Biden was full of crap. That prosecutor before me was not corrupt. He was investigating the company. We have all sorts of evidence admitted from U.S. officials that, okay, because this is a new thing. Yes, the U.S. ambassador under Obama, did tell the third prosecutor we're talking about, Lutsenko, that he had to stop investigations into groups that Obama was funding. He did say that, but it's a conspiracy, it's a lie. I actually saw yesterday in a video I did where CNN is citing George Kent to show that Solomon's a liar, when Solomon's own articles cite George Kent as reason that he's telling the truth. See if I can find this article and show you. But that's how ridiculous. How about this? Oops, sorry, I found it. Remember, did you see the video I was doing on Lyshenko? Lyshenko was this official. Go back and check out my video from the Financial Times. The Financial Times shows Lyshenko admitting in August of 2016, 2 months before the election, yes, I'm actively intervening in this election for Hillary Clinton because I do not like the Trump's policies. And there are other Ukrainian officials doing it with me. That's this guy, Sergei Lyshenko, right? He's being cited last week. He was the
Ukrainian official says that talking about Biden was a prerequisite for Trump to talk to the Ukrainian president.
Did you see that story? Axios had it, ABC had it, CBS had it, CNN had it. Who is the official? Lyshenko. So the very guy that was admitting to illegally interfering in our elections for Hillary Clinton, they leave that part out. They leave that part out of when they're citing him as proof that Trump now should be impeached. The guy that wanted Trump to never get in office in the first place and illegally interfered in our election to try to accomplish that. Oh, and then it turns out he's not a current Ukrainian official. Whoops, we forgot to mention that. Oh, and then it turns out that he comes out publicly and says, actually, I didn't even say what I was reported to say. That's how corrupt these people are. They just continue to cite people. Let me read this to you. This is from Solomon. The investigation into the Anti-Corruption Action Center, based on the assistance they have received from us, is similarly misplaced. Then Embassy Charge d'Affaires George Kent wrote the prosecutor's office in April 2016. At the time, the nation's prosecutor had just been... in a letter that also argued U.S. officials had no concern about how the U.S. aid had been spent. That's George Kent admitting we shouldn't be prosecuting these people. Admitting it there. Kent's letter unequivocally shows the embassy did press Ukrainian prosecutors to back off what normally would be considered an internal law enforcement matter inside a sovereign country. And more than half a dozen U.S. and Ukrainian sources confirmed to me that the Ant-AC case wasn't the only one in which American officials exerted pressure. So you see that? Kent, they're saying, this guy Kent, his own letter. Let me see if I can find it. His own letter shows, yes, we were pressuring them. We said that they shouldn't be investigating these people. They weren't bad. Now, well, geez, I wish I had more time to have been prepared. I don't need recent history. Let me see if I can find this article real quick. Well, regardless, just watch my video. Oh, wait, here it is. Okay, that's George Kent. You got that? Here's an article. CNN. State Department Inspector General gives documents that Giuliani provided. They actually changed the title of this. If you go back and watch my video, the last video I just did, where it talks about how all these left-wing people were saying, oh, this urgent meeting that the state inspector general just came up with, it's going to be damning for Trump. It'll be damning. Well, then it turned out what the inspector general did was gave a bunch of evidence that's damning about the Democrats' situation in the Ukraine. So then CNN comes out and they say, this was all garbage. All of these, we've already been through all these allegations. They're all conspiracy theories that are garbage. Here's what CNN says. Acting Assistant Secretary for European and Eurasian Affairs Philip Rieker and George Kent, a State Department official who oversees Ukraine policy, was previously the deputy chief of the mission in Kiev, sought to provide Counselor Yurik Brukvol and Secretary of Political Affairs Hale with facts counter to the conspiratorial narratives being pushed. On fake news, on March 31st, they forwarded a list of fake news driven to smear out of Ukraine. Reading through this helps with context, they said. Not long after, they followed up with another. The assumption that this ambassador is some kind of liberal outpost leading a political struggle is really without merit or validation. In an email from March 27, for example, Kent calls the do not prosecute list that then Ukrainian Prosecutor General Yuri Litsenko claimed was given to him by Yanukovych complete poppycock. Kent suggested taking a similar approach to the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. They wanted to push back harder. I know the U.S. Embassy in Moscow has pasteurized fake letters by circling in red all the misspelling and grammar mistakes for posting to it. I implore you, go back and watch that video I did just from last night. Do you see how this works? They cite people who themselves have admitted. Solomon's like, dude, here's exactly what this Kent guy said in public about pressuring the Ukrainian prosecutor to stop investigating these people because the U.S. was giving them aid. And then Kent says, that's all poppycock. They had a bunch of misspelling and grammar mistakes. That's CNN's claims of why everything Solomon says is debunked. Right there. Go through that CNN article. Here, I'll put it here. Go ahead. I'll put it on the chat when you have time. Go look through it. They just say it's all conspiracy theory. It's just a conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy theory. That's it. Everybody says it's a conspiracy theory. So it just is a conspiracy theory. That Trump's pushing conspiracy theories. Now, all day before this meeting yesterday, they said, oh man, this state IG, he's a real solid dude. He's going to have evidence. This is going to be the end for Trump. And then when he gives evidence totally opposite what they expected, they say, he's just pushing a conspiracy theory. Did you see Katie Turr from CNN a couple days ago say she's interviewing someone and that person says, we know Ukrainian officials admitted to interfering in the election for Hillary Clinton's side. And she says, no, we don't know that. That's just Russia propaganda. It's admitted in the Financial Times before the election. That's CNN. That's a journalist telling you that's Russian propaganda. We don't have to prove that Biden's guilty or that the DNC was guilty of colluding with Ukraine, even though the evidence overwhelmingly suggests that. All we have to prove is there should be an investigation, and why in God's name wasn't there one? It's unbelievable. So then we get to Schiff, right? So Schiff, what is there to say? So I already went through the situation with Nunes, how he demanded he be out for far less than what Schiff's done. Nunes had to go because he was in direct involvement with people that were involved in the case around Russia collusion and that Spygate narrative. So Schiff had to go. Now we know, Nunes had to go. That was Schiff's claim. Now we know Schiff's in the same position Nunes was in, and he's directly involved with the people that are with this case for impeachment. After he publicly told everyone, I haven't talked to the whistleblower, I didn't have any knowledge of it. He didn't even say me, he said we, implying his office. Now we know that's a lie. And basically the media's like, it was just a little white lie. So here's what we know. The whistleblower didn't have first-hand knowledge of the phone call. He heard it from other people. The Inspector General for the intelligence community changed the forms after the whistleblower complaint to say that second-hand knowledge was acceptable. The media read that and still says that it was a lie and a conspiracy theory for people to say those forms were changed. That story right there should blow everyone's mind. It's not the biggest thing in the world. It's shady, it's all get out. But just the littlest thing that you could read, right? You had people like the Federalist, Sean Davis comes out and is like, holy cow, do you see this? The forms that you could get available, because Nancy Pelosi said everything's available online for all the whistleblower criteria. Okay, so let's look online and see what the forms say. And the form says, first-hand knowledge required. Okay. So people like Sean Davis and the Federalists are like, this is what the form did say. So when was this new form put in place? Because it looks awfully suspicious, like it was done right around the same time that this whistleblower complaint came forward. That's suspicious. And so then the Inspector General releases a letter. It says, yes. Not only was it not changed right, not only was it like Sean Davis was saying, it was changed right around the time of the whistleblower complaint, it wasn't even changed till afterwards. They admit the form that the IG gave the whistleblower was the old form that said first-hand knowledge was necessary. They admit that. Now they go on a defense and say, well, the reason is the form was mistakenly written to give the impression that first-hand knowledge was necessary. No, it wasn't. It wasn't ambiguous. It blatantly said, we're not going to accept second-hand gossip. First-hand knowledge is necessary. But even aside from that, even if you accept their defense, if you're CNN, you could come out and say, look, everyone made a big deal of this, but actually they said that the law was like this all along, blah, blah, blah. But that's not what CNN or the New York Times or NBC or any of them did. What did they do? See, those stupid Trump tards, those Trump conspiracy theories. Read this IG statement. It proves they were wrong again. No, it doesn't. It literally says exactly what we alleged. The exact thing we alleged. They changed, except worse. We said they changed it right around the time of the whistleblower. No, they actually changed it after the whistleblower. They admit it. They just say, well, we think we were justified in doing it. We can have a debate about that. I disagree, but nonetheless. But for the media to just lie right to your face with something this isn't like an opinion thing. This isn't like, was it okay for Trump to ask Ukrainians about Biden? You can have opinions on that, okay? But this is quite literally not a question of opinion, it's a question of fact. Did they change that form right before or even after The whistleblower complaint came out. The Trump tards, us conspiracy theory said that's what it looks like. And the media says, nope, you're all wrong. See, this report proves it. When it literally says exactly what we said it. Now that's the group that's they want you to just trust them when they say, it's a conspiracy theory. Everything about Biden's a conspiracy theory. It's all been debunked. It was debunked months ago. By who? Go watch that video again with Jim Jordan and Jake Tapper, the video I did. Show me one time. In fact, I'll even go further than that. I challenge anyone. Tell your friends. Someone please send me an article that debunks John Solomon's latest article about the memos that came out. The title of the article is like Memos Cast Out on Biden's story. Where he has the affidavit from Shokin. Where he has the sworn testimony came from the Ukraine State Department about Severin, the interim prosecutor. Where he has documents from Devin Archer's emails that show that the State Department was involved with Hunter Biden and Devin Archer trying to cover up this case. Actual physical evidence. Have you seen anyone refute any of it? This is what I've heard. If I'm being as generous as possible. 2 arguments. 1, Shokin was corrupt. Everyone says so. Can you show me an example of the corruption? Well, everyone says he was corrupt. 2, John Solomon's a bad dude. He wasn't they didn't say he was a bad dude when he was working for the Washington Post or when he was nominated for 2 Pulitzer Prizes. He wasn't a bad dude then. But now if you go to the Daily Beast, they run an article, all the people at the Hill are upset with John Sullivan because he's pushing lies and conspiracy theories. It's funny. All the people at the Hill weren't upset when the rest of the Hill was pushing lies and conspiracy theories about Russia. We had almost every journalist from every mainstream outlet in this country looking into whether or not Trump had hookers pee on him in a bed that Obama once slept on. But they can't find it in their time to be interested on the vice president at the exact same time that he's the point man to end corruption in a country like Ukraine. His son being on the board of one of the places that is corrupt and getting $50,000 a year. They don't have the time to look into that. They don't have the time to look in whether or not that might have had something to do with why Joe Biden extorted through $1 billion the country of the Ukraine to get that prosecutor fired. Don't have the time for that. Now, Trump peace stories. Woo! You kidding me? Trump fed the fish incorrectly when he went over to visit some foreign leaders? Oh my goodness. 2 scoops of ice cream Trump eats? Oh. But you have a question about your money, $1 billion of your tax dollars being used for admitted extortion. How dare you try to distract from the real crime? Well, what's the real crime? Well, Trump wanted to also know about that extortion. Oh, we can't have that. That's terrible. Now, remember I just told you that all these journalists said, we'll never be lied to by the intel community again. We won't do it. What kind of journalists relies on... And it's not just the fact that they think they're right when they just say that's a debunked conspiracy theory. They're so arrogant and morally superior. Oh, that's just a debunked conspiracy theory, dude. And you can find all their sycophants that just repeat them on Twitter. You know? How many times do I hear this on Twitter? Yeah, dude. Like, Trump did break the law. The Mueller report shows it. Bob Mueller admitted he obstructed justice like 8 times. I'm like, okay, show me. Yeah, he admits it. See, here. No, he says right at the top of Section 2 or Section B that he is not saying that this is a crime one way or the other. He's just putting forth evidence. Yeah, but he said the only reason he didn't charge him was because he's president. No, he didn't. Here's him coming back in the second interview, the day that he gave his interview in the committee meetings. Ted Lieu asked him, and he mistakenly said yes. Bob Mueller opens up the second section after the lunch break saying, I want to clear something up. When Ted Lieu asked me about this, I feel I gave the mistaken impression. I am not saying that we would have charged Trump if he wasn't president. I'm saying we didn't even look into it because he is president. That's not saying he committed a crime. Yet these morons tell, and it's not just that they tell me, right? Because I could accept that and just be like, look, I don't think you read it right. I've done it. I make mistakes. People will show it to me. I'm like, crap, okay, you're right. You know? But it's that they go, you haven't even read the report unlike me. It's so obvious. Or you'd know that Trump obstructed justice.
And they also said that he worked with the Russians illegally. Show me.
Well, it's the same here. Well, that prosecutor was corrupt. Biden, everybody said it. Oh, okay, what did he do that was corrupt?
Well, the investigation into Burisma, Hunter Biden's company, was dead.
No, it wasn't. Even the Anti-Corruption Action Center admits there were 4 investigations. 2 of them, they say, this is a group that hated Shokin. They say he watered down 2 of them, but 2 of them were still ongoing and then went to the NABU. The NABU, by the way, which was the organization that worked with the Obama administration to bury cases in the past. Show me the evidence of the corruption. That's fine for some like Joe Schmo online yelling at me at Twitter. Whatever. We're all our own people. And I ain't going to, look at me, I get fired up here. I ain't going to claim to be better than anyone else and that. But I don't call myself a journalist. What's Jake Tapper's excuse? What's the New York Times excuse? What's Politico's excuse? And all the rest of them. They just repeat, well, these are all debunked. Really, tell me how. Pick out what, Solomon's reporting's all debunked. Okay. Pick out one of the things he's claimed and then tell me how it's debunked. Well, he said this prosecutor, Yakunovich, she never gave a do not prosecute list, that was a lie. George Kent said that. Really, because I have George Kent saying in public right here, the investigation into the Anti-Corruption Action Center, based on the assistance they have received from us, is similarly misplaced. He said in a letter that also argued U.S. officials had no concern about how the U.S. aid had been sent. So he's sending letters to the prosecutor saying, look, you shouldn't be investigating these people. Our aid was totally legitimate to them. And what was called unequivocally shows the embassy did press Ukrainian prosecutors to back off what normally would be considered an internal law enforcement matter. Why in God's name would the Obama administration be pressuring a foreign country to not look at a group within their country? Can you imagine China coming to the United States and being like, hey, we'd really like you to drop your investigation into the legal funds that the ACLU got. Please just drop them. We'd be like, what? Go away. What are you talking about? You have no say in our internal affairs. But it turns out the Obama administration was giving them money. So they had a stake in it. Please stop investigating these people we're giving money. And then that guy comes out and goes, oh, it's absurd to say that the U.S. Embassy was suggesting to drop that investigation. You admitted it in a public letter. And then CNN cites you saying it's poppycock. Well, if George Kent says it's poppycock, then it must be poppycock. If Lyshenko, the guy who admitted in 2016 to the mainstream media before the election, hey, we're interfering to help the Democrats. If that guy says Trump's bad, then Trump's bad. That's it. Every single time you could be like, but look, this prosecutor says, go back again, watch that Jake Tapper. He says, well, we can't trust this prosecutor, he's corrupt. And then like 3 seconds later, the prosecutor in the Ukraine, he'll cite a different prosecutor. Okay, let's see what else that prosecutor said. Now, when the prosecutor says things that are beneficial to Trump, he's lying. When he says things that aren't, then he's telling the truth and he's noble. I mean, you can't make this crap up. And that's all they say. I'll talk to people. That's debunked conspiracy theory. That's just debunked. Politico reported on it in 2018, how shady all Biden's family connections were. Were they just Trump sycophants too? Was that just conspiracy theories then? Was it just a conspiracy theory that people in the Ukraine publicly admitted to the Financial Times they were interfering in the election? That's also a conspiracy theory. Or how about this? Was it a conspiracy theory that Mifsud, who was supposedly the Russian intel official that got all of this mess started into the Russia hoax? Because he was the one who told George Papadopoulos, hey, the Russians hacked Hillary's emails and have dirty emails on her. That guy was interviewed by the FBI 3 times, or was interviewed and lied 3 times to the FBI, and Mueller didn't even seek to charge him with any crime. Is that a conspiracy theory? Is it a conspiracy theory that the dirt they got on Trump that led to the spying, getting a FISA warrant, led to the start of the investigation, was Kremlin sourced and never verified? Is that a conspiracy theory? And notice they never called that. It's a language thing. They never call what they believe conspiracy theories. They believe Putin had Trump under his thumb and Trump was working as a stooge for Putin. But that wasn't a conspiracy theory. They assume that's the truth, and then you saying that's garbage is the conspiracy theory. You don't just get to say conspiracy theory and write it off. You could try, and that's what they're hoping, that the average American doesn't have time to actually look into this. Well, thank you. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate the new sub. Yeah, Blase, I think I would probably end up having to bite my lip if I was a reporter. Of course, I ran as for Congress. I'm pretty good when I want to be. I could be calm when I want. But it's more fun to be upset about this stuff. But if I was sitting in that interview with Jake Tapper, like, I would have made him look like a fool. We can't trust Shokin. Okay, can we trust Hunter Biden's lawyers? Because they also said that Joe Biden lied and that this guy wasn't corrupt. And Jake Tapper, look, you could say this. Let me play Jake Tapper's role, or someone who dislikes Trump's role in this. Okay, but Hunter Biden's company's lawyers could have had a reason to make that up, right? Maybe they're just trying to butter up this prosecutor and blah, blah, blah. Now, I could argue against that, but here's the easiest argument. That's true. You could be right. Seems like reason for an investigation, right? You can't just pretend like this evidence doesn't exist. Oh, it's all been debunked. How? Show me one person. Again, I'm throwing the challenge out there. One person that's talked about that. John Buretta was the name of the defense attorney for Burisma. Show me one person since it's been 8 days, I believe, since John Solomon released this report. Last Wednesday. I did a video on it. I was up all night waiting for this to come out because Solomon said he was going to release this stuff. I was like, that's huge. You're telling me the defense attorney for Burisma admitted that he thought that Joe Biden was full of it when he said that Shokin was corrupt? That's huge. But the average person's like, who? Buretta? Shokin? Hunter Biden? What? What are you talking about? They don't know. That's why, and I say this over and over again, when you turn into like the White House press correspondents' dinner, or you listen to CNN or the New York Times talk about the importance of a free press, and they'll wax on how noble, like these, oh, the press is so important to inform the public, and we hold truth to power, and, you know, without a free press, democracy would die in darkness, and, you know, all this crap. And they're right. The problem is we don't have a free press. That's how we get to a situation where the press, instead of holding truth to power, is obscuring the truth for the powerful. And so you could talk to the average American in your street, and they, you know, what do you know about this? What do you know about this impeachment? I know something about Trump asking someone in Ukraine for dirt on Biden. Yeah, it sounds shady. Tell them the story. Don't even put your own person. Just tell them the bare story. Did you know that Joe Biden was trying to investigate corruption in the Ukraine? And one of the guys he called corrupt, his name was Zlochevsky, and this guy owned a big gas company. And Joe Biden's son worked on the board of that gas company, and he got $50,000 a month. Now, an Exxon board of directors in the United States gets like $20,000 a month. But Joe Biden's son had no experience in the gas industry or in Ukraine. But he's getting double what a normal board of director on a gas company would get. 600-something thousand a year. Did you know that that company was being investigated by a prosecutor? And Joe Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion to the Ukraine unless they fired that prosecutor? And did you know, not only was that never investigated, but the media and the Democrats say it is criminal to try to investigate it. That, all of a sudden that sounds a little different. Wait, that's what Trump was looking into? Yeah. Wait, $1 billion of our tax dollars. My roads are falling apart. I don't have health care. I have to work 2 jobs. And we're giving $1 billion to make sure Joe Biden's son's not prosecuted? Allegedly, possibly. I can tell you 100%, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if it turns out that Donald Trump ever threatens to withhold foreign aid to a country to stop an investigation into his, or I won't even say that, to fire a prosecutor who happens to be looking into his son, I will demand an investigation. If Joe Biden is innocent and he was honest, he would say, my God, the optics of this look so bad, there should be an investigation into me. Now, I'm innocent, he would say, but I get it. And you know what's funny? You go back and you read all the defenses of Biden on this, and they all say this: we admit that it was terrible. It was a terrible conflict of interest in 2016 for Biden to be the point man in fighting corruption in the Ukraine, while his son is working for the very corrupt person he's supposed to be fighting against. Do you remember them saying that in 2016, though? And this is what I was talking about earlier. This is what ends up happening. They'll admit in retrospect, oh, what we did was bad, right? Yes, you're right. Biden was bad in 2016 when he did that, but trust us, it's all cool now. Once it can't affect them on their side anymore, they'll say, yeah, okay, that wasn't the best thing. Moving on. Where was the media in 2016 if they all admit that there was a huge conflict of interest back then? And if they admit it's a conflict of interest, then how isn't Biden getting the prosecutor fired looking into it part of that conflict of interest? The idea, what does that term mean, conflict of interest? That means, well, what you're seeking to do as your publicly stated job or goal is conflicted with your personal life. Right? So in other words, Pete Rose has a conflict of interest if he's playing and managing the Cincinnati Reds, but he's betting against the Reds. His bet is of personal value to him, which is conflicted with his job. His job's trying to get the Reds to win. His bet is to get the Reds to lose. That's a conflict of interest. That means the potential actions you're taking should be viewed with suspicion. That's what a conflict of interest means. They admit there was a conflict of interest. And then the act that you could take that would be the most suspicious is getting a prosecutor fired that is looking into your son. Yet they say that's okay. Because the IMF said it was okay. Or because leaders in Europe said it was okay. That's nonsense. Any journalist worth their salt would go, whoa. Even if you personally eat dinner with Joe Biden and think he's a great guy, maybe you let him sniff your daughter's hair or something. Still you would be like, oh, what? How could this be? This looks so bad. We're going to investigate this. And again, if you like Biden, you're not going in there thinking he's guilty, maybe. But you certainly have to investigate that story. That's huge. Remember, why have they been going after Trump's tax returns for 3 years? What's the insinuation? What are they trying to prove? They're trying to prove that Donald Trump had some sort of business dealing in Russia, right? I've been saying ever since I have people, what about the tax returns? What about the tax returns? What about them? Hypothetically, let's say hypothetically they say what you think they say. Let's say it shows that Trump gets $5 million a year out of businesses in Russia. What the heck does that prove? Nothing. Because the whole story's based on a lie in the first place. This is their story with the tax returns. Well, if he had businesses in Russia, and then he went easy on Russia, that proves that, like, he goes easy on Russia because they're holding this over his head that he makes millions of dollars in Russia. One, there is no proof of that. There's no proof of that link. And second, it falls apart when you realize that by any objective measure, Trump has been way harder on Russia than Obama was. Every measure. So how does it even make sense? But still, they leave no stone. You remember Rachel Maddow? We finally got it. We got some of his tax returns. Oh, we're going to read them live. And then it blew up in their face. But remember, everyone was so excited. All the Trump haters. Release the tax returns. You can't be on the ballot in California unless the tax returns are out, right? That's what they told us. Because they think if it shows any businesses in Russia, that's the smoking gun. Why? Because that shows a conflict of interest. The same people that for 3 years told you that know when we could actually prove the conflict of interest. Joe Biden getting his son's prosecutor fired by threatening to withhold $1 billion U.S. tax dollars, and they don't care in the least bit. They just say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. And we have proof of the quid pro quo. What's up, WZ? Yeah, do you like that little Biden hair sniffing comment? I thought it was pretty good. Now, here's the other thing I wanted to talk about. I mentioned why it would be okay for Trump, even if it's not investigating election interference, to be able to investigate other crimes that occurred within previous administrations that weren't investigated. Can someone explain to me, is anyone out there, can anyone explain to me why it's okay to investigate election interference but not other crimes? Can anyone explain that to me? If Obama, for example, would have found credible evidence, right? If he would have had whistleblowers come forth and say, look, we have evidence that George W. Bush killed a hooker in China. Or one of Bush's staffers. I don't know. Whatever. Insert your crime. Was running drugs out of China. Whatever. Obama's not allowed to investigate that? Because it could be seen as potential beneficial to Obama in the next election or his party? Is that what you're telling me? Why? What's the difference? If you're allowed to investigate election interference, why aren't you allowed to investigate other serious crimes? And don't be fooled. This is a serious crime. What Hunter Biden's alleged to have done is very serious. What Biden's alleged to have done himself is incredibly serious. Threatening $1 billion of U.S. tax dollars for personal gain. The idea that we have, and we know, everybody knows, you don't have to be a genius to know, what were they paying Hunter Biden $50,000 a month for? Because his daddy would save them if they got in trouble. And it worked, by the way, money well spent. All of a sudden, everybody was saying all these, right? And this is the other part, this blows my freaking mind. They want you to believe, this is the official mainstream media Democrat narrative about what happened with this Biden situation. I'm not making this up. This is the official narrative. Biden was pissed off that his son's company wasn't being investigated hard enough. Does that make any sense? Right? So let's say that, let's buy this garbage story for a minute. So Biden's sitting here and he's talking to leaders in the EU, and he's talking to the International Monetary Fund, and he's talking to anti-corruption activists in the Ukraine, and they're all sitting on some conference call and they're like, man, this guy's Shokin, Biden. Let me start here. There's this guy Zlochevsky, right? He was this corrupt friend of the former president, Yanukovych, and they were pro-Russian dudes. And this Zlochevsky guy, he's still hanging around. He's corrupt. We think he's smuggling drug money, and he's doing all this corrupt crap with his gas industry. He owns the biggest gas company. Man, we really got to get to the bottom of this guy and figuring out his corruption. Biden's like, yeah, man, the United States, we don't tolerate corruption. You're right. And everyone in the EU is like, yeah, you're right. And then, so why isn't anything happening? Well, here's the deal, man. The prosecutor that's looking into that, he's corrupt. He won't actually look into this guy. Oh, really? Yeah, the guy, Shokin's his name. He's corrupt. He's a real corrupt dude. Okay, I'm getting it. And this Zlochevsky guy, he's looking into him. Yeah, and Biden's like, yeah, that sounds familiar. Zlochevsky. Yeah, he owns this gas company, Burisma, and Biden's like, Burisma, that sounds familiar. Yeah, your son's on the board of directors, Mr. Biden. Oh, yeah. So wait, you're telling me that this prosecutor, he's corrupt, and he's not looking into this company hard enough that my son's on the board of? That's what we're saying, Mr. Vice President. My God, that's outrageous. My son needs to be investigated harder. I'm outraged. I'm going to withhold $1 billion until we get a prosecutor that'll really look into the corruption of my son. That's what they want us to believe. Okay, then Joe Biden withholds the $1 billion. And then, thank God, finally Biden's like, oh my God, we finally got rid of this corrupt prosecutor. Finally my son will be investigated. Finally his company will be investigated thoroughly, as should be the case. And so we'll give this $1 billion. Oh, and it got kicked to this agency, the NABU. Well, Joe Biden, am very happy about that because Obama's administration's actually worked closely with the NABU in other cases that we've had them drop that we before. So I could trust the NABU. They're friends of ours. They'll do the right thing. Oh, they buried it a couple months afterwards. Oh, shucks. My luck being Vice President Biden. Oh, darn it. We got rid of the corrupt prosecutor that had the cases open, and then it went to the non-corrupt guys, and they only kept the case open for like 2 months and then buried it. Ah, my poor luck. Well, I mean, I could still be upset that this Zlochevsky guy that I said was so obviously corrupt that we had to fire the prosecutor that was looking into him for not nailing him yet. I could be upset and say, we as the United States want our $1 billion back. You just put the investigations in the hands of another corrupt prosecutor. I guess I'll just leave it alone. That's the official story. Literally the official story. Biden was upset that this Zlochevsky guy wasn't being investigated hard enough. A guy who was his son's boss. So he got that prosecutor out. The new group gets it, buries the investigation within 4 months, and Biden's no longer upset somehow. Neither's Christine Lagarde at the IMF. Neither's all these leaders in the EU. Neither's the Anti-Corruption Action Center in the Ukraine. How could that be? They were all pissed off that Zlochevsky was running free and no prosecutor was looking into him. But as soon as we get rid of that prosecutor and the case gets buried, now they're not upset. Isn't that weird? Almost like it was just that they were upset that the prosecutor was looking into this guy. How can anyone believe this story? And then the Democrat, it goes further than that. The media wants to believe, maybe Hunter Biden brought some experience to the table that was worth $50,000 a month. Are you kidding me? This is just the Ukraine, by the way. Maybe, just maybe, if you're the most sympathetic Democrat ever, you could say, despite the overwhelming evidence that this warrants an investigation. Again, I don't have to prove that Hunter Biden's guilty or Joe Biden. I just have to prove that there's evidence that deserves to be looked at. And there clearly is. If there's evidence that deserves to be looked at, and the media and the leftovers from the Obama administration have not done so, it is well within the purview of the President of the United States to ask for that evidence to be handed to his administration. That means there's no case for impeachment. That's it. All we have to do is prove there's reason for an investigation. Do you think your friend down the street that doesn't know about this, that just says, I guess I support an impeachment investigation because it seems shady that Trump would be asking for evidence of his opponent, don't you think their opinion might change if they knew the real story? Again, we don't have to prove Biden's guilty. All we have to do is ask, look, and I don't care who it is. I don't care what the extenuating circumstances are. I feel as Americans, we have to agree on some base things. Like murder's bad, rape's bad. Here's another one. If someone in the executive branch of high authority threatens to withhold huge sums of money to another country unless they fire a prosecutor who just happens to be looking at that person's son, we should have an investigation. I don't think that's an unreasonable position to have, regardless of what Christine Lagarde at the IMF says or what the European Union says. I don't care. That's a baseline for an investigation. We don't rely on gossip from other reporters or other countries to determine whether or not something's illegal. How can that be a controversial opinion? We know for a fact if this was Donald Trump, there would be an investigation immediately. If a prosecutor got fired because Trump threatened to withhold $1 billion tax dollars to his country, and then that prosecutor sworn an affidavit, the reason I got fired was I was told over and over again that Trump wanted me to drop the investigation into his son, I will guarantee you there would be 50 reporters outside of that prosecutor's door tomorrow. But instead we're told, we don't need to talk to that guy. That's it. That's without me going into Shokin's sworn affidavit. That's without me going into Hunter Biden's own company defense attorney, John Buretta, saying that he knew Biden was spreading misinformation and that actually Shokin wasn't corrupt. That's just more icing on the cake, more evidence. I mean, it's nonsensical. Oh, and I keep getting on this, and I forgot to get. So second, they said, well, the difference is that's not election interference. Yes, it doesn't matter if it was or not, as I articulated, but yes, it is election interference. And this is what I don't get. Someone defined me what election interference is. So getting dirt on your opponent, that's election interference. If I run for president, right, and I go to China and I say, hey, I'm running against Elizabeth Warren. You guys got dirt in there. That's election interference if the Chinese give me dirt, is what they're saying. My take on this from the get-go, by the way, just in case you're wondering, I don't care about Don Jr. trying to get dirt on Hillary from Russians, and I also don't care that Hillary paid for dirt from Kremlin sources against Trump. That's opposition research. It's shady, it's scummy, but I don't think it's against the law. Now, if you use that dirt as an elected official and don't verify it and then spy on your opponent, as the Obama administration did, then that becomes the biggest political scandal in the history of the country. But just getting the dirt, how do we define dirt? What if, Trump would have found out that Hillary's a crappy basketball player or something because Chinese government had footage of her shooting free throws in China or something on some tour? Is that dirt? Is that illegal? What's the definition? If they have proof that she committed crimes and Trump gets that and then gives it to the FBI, is that illegal dirt? No one tells it. They just say, well, that's election interference. What exactly is it? Define the interference. And why does it only work that direction? My contention is, if you're the type of person that thinks that stuff's guilty, makes you guilty or should be a crime, then why would burying dirt on your own self with the help of foreign aid not also qualify as election interference? Right? Trump should be impeached because of what he's doing in the Ukraine, right? Let's just say this hypothetically. So this impeachment scenario goes on and on, right? Okay? So let's say that we then find out 2 weeks from now, after this impeachment investigation began, that Donald Trump calls Zelensky, the president of the Ukraine, and he says, look, I want you to bury all the evidence of any conversation that me and you had. Remember, I had that conversation with you after our phone call where I said, actually, we're going to withhold this money unless you investigate Biden. Burn that tape. Right? And then the president of the Ukraine, Zelensky, comes out to the U.S. media and is like, hey, actually, we had a second call, and Trump did tell me he was going to threaten to withhold the money unless I burned this tape. What Trump has done there, right? Do you understand what Trump has done? Trump has buried dirt into himself that could affect the 2016 or 2020 election, right? Wouldn't that also be said? Oh, he's trying to affect the 2020 election because he's burying dirt into himself that would make himself or his party look bad. Everybody would agree. I would agree with that. Yet somehow, Joe Biden, leading into the 2016 election, being part of the Obama administration that Hillary Clinton was part of, that was being ran, every Democrat was running on, oh, Obama, Obama, Obama. Scandal-free administration, remember? That's what the media and the Dems told us. All of a sudden, it's going to come out publicly that this prosecutor is looking into Joe Biden's son. At the exact same time Joe Biden was fighting corruption in the Ukraine, his son's under investigation for working for one of these corrupt oligarchs. You don't think that would have hurt the Democrats in 2016? The fact that Biden himself wasn't running is irrelevant. Hillary Clinton was part of that administration. It would have hurt the Democrats as a whole to show that there was corruption of such a high magnitude in the Obama administration. So him seeking to bury that investigation, which is what's being alleged, would in fact be foreign election interference. So why wouldn't it be within Trump's purview to look in that? If Adam Schiff, right? So I had said this, like I did this, check out the video I did on Adam Schiff, a staffer at the exact same time, August 28th, that he was tweeting out allegations that were in the whistleblower report. Schiff was publicly tweeting that out, right? This is before the whistleblower report was made public. At the same time, he had a staffer who was in the Ukraine talking to Ukrainian officials. That trip was paid for by the Atlantic Council. Go back. I mean, it's just so unbelievably how tied in all this stuff is. Go read all the Intercept or PolitiFact or all the places 2 weeks ago when this scandal first broke. And they're trying to defend. They're saying Joe Biden didn't do anything wrong. All of the whole world wanted this prosecutor fired, says Aretha Asland, something Asland was her name, from the Atlantic Council. Okay, well, who's the Atlantic Council? Oh, they're paid for by George Soros. Oh, they have this founder of CrowdStrike on their board. So this is the group, right? Remember, what was Trump first asking about from the Ukraine? CrowdStrike's interference into our 2016 election, right? That's the first thing he asked the president of Ukraine. So then the organization that has the founder of CrowdStrike on it is paying to send one of Adam Schiff's staffers over to the Ukraine to talk to officials. Now, based on Adam Schiff's own interpretation of what's corrupt, I feel that all of his conversations with that staffer in the Ukraine should be subpoenaed. And every conversation that staffer in the Ukraine had with any Ukrainian official should be subpoenaed. Because if that staffer asked one question about, hey, did Trump say any of this to you? That is Adam Schiff's campaign trying to dig up dirt and evidence of possible crimes that Trump committed to help them in the 2020 election. Now we know Adam Schiff knew of the whistleblower complaint before it was made public. He helped set him up with a lawyer that was connected to the Clintons. Just like every allegation. Like I started off this video saying, remember Cohen, Trump's lawyer? Well, it turns out before he testified in Congress, who was he meeting with? Adam Schiff. Every single time. Schiff's always behind the scenes helping, has weird conversations. Or how about, you remember with the Democrats with Christine Blasey Ford? Well, it turns out they set her up with an attorney. Isn't it always weird that's the way it goes? Everybody can see what's going on. If you have a cursory look into this, you can tell. They've tried to impeach Trump for everything. The Washington Post had an article the day after Trump got elected saying it's time to begin impeachment. Now the impeachment proceedings begin. They tried to impeach him for a guy I follow, Phil Kerpen, that I kind of met through debate. You should follow him on Twitter. He has a big long thread on this. So let's see, this is the fourth time they've tried to impeach Trump. Officially, people had voted for official impeachment inquiries. The first time was for calling countries, and I don't swear very often on this channel, but for calling countries shithole countries. That warranted 60-something votes for impeachment. And then I forget what the second one was, but the third one was that he attacked members of the squad. That was 90-something people voted for impeachment. That's it. So now we have double that. Now we have 200 that want impeachment. A little over 200. A little over double, if we're honest. But we have to take them seriously this time. Nancy Pelosi, it's with a heavy heart. We support our president, and it's. I'm praying for him. I hope he makes it through this, but it's just, we have no choice. We have to investigate. What are you talking about? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Trump's under this scrutiny. Adam Schiff should be under the scrutiny. Any Democrat who talked to any Ukrainian official, let's see all of their documents right now. Let's see Bob Menendez, Dick Durbin, and Patrick Leahy's documents when they sent that letter in May of 2018 to the Ukraine. Let's subpoena all them. Get them in front of the committee, right? The standard is we can investigate and do anything we want to Trump. But if he wants to investigate any one of us, it's criminal. I have no doubt, I can't prove it, but my gut feeling tells me Adam Schiff and his team personally helped write this complaint. No doubt. Then where are we at? He lied about it too, right?
Well, who cares that he lied about it? Oh,
it doesn't blow. So what? He helped write it. What does that prove? Trump trying to get... And this comes back to something I've said before. Why in God's name does being foreign have anything to do with anything when it comes to these matters? I understand how we could look at like the time of the Founding Fathers and they would understand like we don't want foreign influence into our elections, right? And it made sense. The reason for this is you assume that domestic influence would be stuff that would be for the good of the country. Because you live in the United States, so if you were trying to influence the election, you were probably doing so because you wanted the best possible leaders of the United States. But someone in the UK or Britain wouldn't have wanted that. Okay. That doesn't make sense in today's globalist world. Mark Zuckerberg interfering into our election, he doesn't give a shit about the United States. He cares about his bottom line. He cares about globalism. He cares about power for his company. His interests aren't the United States. Just like China's interest isn't China, or Russia's, or just like China's isn't the United States, or Russia's isn't the United States. So if I get dirt on someone who happens to live in Russia, that's a crime. If I get dirt on Hillary Clinton. But if I get dirt on Hillary Clinton from Zuckerberg, it's not a crime. Why does that make sense? So in this specific case, so you're telling me that Donald Trump asking someone in Ukraine about publicly available information that it turns out there is evidence that Biden did something wrong and his son did something wrong. Him asking the president of the Ukraine to look into that, that's criminal. Because that's him trying to personally work with people to get his opponent in trouble. But Adam Schiff personally working with someone who heard gossip about that to file an impeachment proceeding or a whistleblower complaint that he knows will lead to impeachment, that's not criminal? Both are trying to present evidence of crimes. John Brennan just came out and said, hey, secondhand knowledge is now allowed. That means all of you in the intel agency, step right up. You could be whistleblowers. Let's bring Trump down. That's allowed? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. All I ask for is consistency. I have said from day one, if people have been following me, day one I said, if Trump or people connected to him committed crimes, so be it. They should be held accountable. All I want is consistent application of those crimes. That's it. Check out my video. I did it a couple days ago, but the quality sucks, so I just re-put it. My top 5 things that the Dems accused Trump of that they've done worse or more blatantly. Other than annulments, my challenge still stands. Name me one thing that they've charged someone connected to Trump's team with, and I'll guarantee I could almost immediately name you people connected to Hillary or the intel community have done. Lying to the FBI, failing to register for it, FARA violations, lying to Congress. All of it. Obstruction of justice. Getting evidence from foreign countries. They do this stuff blatantly. Nunez had to get out because he had connections to Trump. But Schiff, who's in the exact same position, the head of the Intelligence Committee, he doesn't have to get out when he has connections directly to this whistleblower that he lied about on national television. And the media just acts like, well, How many times is Schiff going to lie on national television and the media is still going to take him seriously? You remember, this is the guy that told us for 2 years, I have personally seen evidence that Trump is guilty of conspiring with Russians. Personally saw it. Indictments are coming, he said. He lied. And no one, without skipping a beat, he was just like, the day the Mueller report came down, if this guy had any shred of integrity whatsoever, he'd have been on television begging for forgiveness for being a liar. But instead, he goes on shamelessly. Yeah, obstruction of justice. Him and his boy, Eric Swalwell. Did you see the Lewandowski hearings? Lewandowski called out Swalwell for it. The guy who thought Trump was a Russian stooge. I still do, he said. We know you do, Swalwell. Stick to claiming you want to nuke American citizens for having guns, okay? Leave the actual conversation to the big boys. Go back to losing another presidential election. I would have got as many votes as Swalwell. I mean, it's just nonsense. And they get away with it because no one holds them to account. So check out, I like this channel, Jimmy Dore. He's a comedian. He's progressive. There's a good chance if you're watching me, you would disagree with 90% of what he says. But one, he's funny, which solves everything to me pretty much. Secondly, he's against this Russia crap. See, Jimmy Dore's a real progressive. And I disagree with the progressives on a lot. I think the identity politics stuff's crap. I think that the socialism's crap. Okay? But I will give credit where credit's due. Jimmy Dore and Aaron Maté, they've been all over this Russia hoax because they realize something. If you're a progressive, and I say this all the time, your biggest enemy isn't Donald Trump. It's the intel community and the media and the establishment Democrats. Because they will never, ever allow you to have a candidate that actually expresses your values. Ever. Right? The best thing, if you're really, and I was talking this, if you check out, I say this a lot, check out my videos. Check out my wardrobe. I'm so great. I'm so impressive. But, no, if you look at the interview I did with the guys from Border Command, right, and we're talking about how to frame issues. Yeah, I know funny's a matter of opinion. For example, I think I'm hilarious, so. But how you frame issues. A lot of times when you're talking to someone, particularly that disagrees with you, what happens is you need to be able to speak to issues that they're concerned with. So let me give you an example with a conservative. Like, I'm for ending most of the war on drugs. Well, my father-in-law would be appalled by that. And so the way I explain it to him, I don't change my position, but I'm like, look, you hate the cartels, right? Yeah, they're terrible. You know, he has his son's in law enforcement. He's like, of course. And I'm like, did I say father-in-law? I meant grandfather-in-law. Anyways, so I explained to him, I'm like, legaling drugs would harm the cartels, or, ending the war on drugs would harm these cartels and blah, blah, blah. And then that's more palpable to him. That doesn't mean he 100% agrees with me now, but he understands my position is not undefensible even under his system of values. Right? So one of the things I try to say is, look, you're a Democrat, you're a progressive, you hate Donald Trump. I get that. I don't. I like Trump. I support him. Let me just in full disclosure, when I ran for Congress in the District 12 special election in Pennsylvania, this was just, 7-8 months ago, my campaign manager was my friend Tom. Tom's a Democrat, right? But Tom ran because me and Tom both believe in country over our party. We can have disagreements on specific policies, and Tom knew that, and we did have disagreements on policies. But he was okay, because he trusted me and knew that I was someone who was willing to listen to him, was willing to concede when someone makes good points. You would rather have someone that disagrees with you on some things, but's willing to hear you and actually cares about you, than someone who's just completely partisan and thinks their side's always right. So, one of the things when I'm talking to Tom and I'm talking to other people about why I think the Russia and now this Ukraine garbage is the biggest political scandal in the history of the United States is because it exemplifies that the country is not ran by your elected leader. It is ran by shadowy behind-the-scene people, whether it be big business people or whether it be unelected bureaucrats in the intel community. And if those unelected bureaucrats are allowed to be kingmaker and decide who or who not could be elected by using their mouthpieces in the mainstream media or spying on people that they don't like, etc., like they did to Trump and stymie his administration, they're going to do it to the left, too. You think Jill Stein has a chance? You think Tulsi Gabbard has a chance? That's the irony of Tulsi coming out and saying, I'm for impeachment now. Tulsi's being smeared by the party of peace, the Democrats. Why? Because she had the nerve to go and talk to Assad. What's to stop Tulsi? let's say a miracle happens and she would win. What's to stop the same intel officials from leaking stuff and saying, oh, Tulsi had an inappropriate conversation with Assad. We should impeach. You think if anyone would know, Tulsi would. Because she's being smeared in the same way Trump is. But no, she's got to try to, try to get brownie points with the base. So sorry, Tulsi, you lose my support. Even though I disagree with all, all the social justice-y crap that you push, I still thought you had integrity. I still think she probably does. But she's got no spine. She wasn't willing to stand up for her values when it mattered. By the way, if you were Tulsi and you were actually for restraint in Syria, wouldn't you be out there praising Trump when he... I knocked Trump when he bombed Syria, but wouldn't you be out there praising him when he's trying to bring troops home from Afghanistan and things like that? But nope. Where's the party of peace all of a sudden? How dare Trump? How dare he try to bring troops home? Oh, the only time you could turn on Fox News and MSNBC and see them simultaneously praising Trump, do you know when it was? I'm not making this up. Go and check. When he finally bombed Syria. And I remember turning on, like, Morning Joe, finally, he's acting presidential. That was the Democrat take. That was the media take then. That's the group that's supposed to be holding truth to power. That's the group that told us after the Iraq war, we won't be lied to by the intel community again. 15 years later telling you, we have to support the intel agency. And this isn't conspiracy theory, right? This isn't unproven. We know, for example, the IG thought that the head of the FBI, Comey, not only broke protocol in unprecedented ways that would have severe lasting effects to damage the FBI, but also was referred to for a criminal prosecution. That's one of the heads of the intel community. And while this investigation, the IG was doing this investigation, you know what CNN was telling us? You know what MSNBC was telling us? Oh, if you question these intel officials, you're harming the country. All of a sudden, all the Republicans are bashing law enforcement. That's a terrible thing. It's spreading these conspiracy theories. And it turns out we were right and they were wrong. Now, if a head of the FBI broke protocol to go after Barack Obama, you damn well bet there would have been people winning Pulitzer Prizes. Yeah, that's basically what it is. Pulitzer Prizes investigating that story. But when it was Trump, we don't like Trump, so whatever. That's how absurd this is. So, I mean, it's just one absurdity upon another. And now they believe these intel officials. They say it's corrupt to look after them. Someone, again, I started off saying this. Someone tell me the crime that Trump, what is the high crime or misdemeanor? Show me the code, the law that Trump broke. And that's the other thing. This is, I don't mean to brag about me. I love bragging about myself, but in a jokey manner, right? But I am being dead serious when I say this. I think I've done pretty damn good work on this. I've done research. I've been reasonable. There's been things that have said that would have been pro-Trump that I was like, I don't know about that, right? I've tried. I admit my bias. I totally do. But I think my facts have been pretty good. Over and over, I'll do something. Like, let me just give you the smallest example, right? So I'm on this website, Above Top Secret, and a lot of what I post on Twitter or on YouTube, I'll post there, right? I posted up my video about the 5 crimes Democrats accuse Trump of they've done worse. You know what pushback I got from the anti-Trump crowd was? Oh, so you're saying it's okay for Trump to do them? And I'm like, no! That's not what I said at all. I said Trump's people got convicted of the crime. Hillary's people didn't. That's absurd. If you're interested in equal application of law, then you should be outraged by that. And no one bothered to look at any of the cases and say I was wrong. It's just, oh, you're a hypocrite. You think it's okay for Trump to do it. That's not what I said. It's like that with everything. It's like they're getting their talking points from CNN. Right? It's a conspiracy theory. Everything John Solomon said is a conspiracy. It's all conspiracy theory. It's a conspiracy theory. But we have evidence and affidavits and all that. Now it's just a conspiracy theory. It's already been debunked. Where? Can you tell? Give me an example of someone debunking one of these claims. Can you please? They've been debunked. I'm not even going to bother to talk to you about this. And then they act like they've won. I don't know. I go back and forth. Maybe someone can help me out. Do you think that Jake Tapper and the CNN crowd and the New York Times crowd, do they know they're corrupt? Or do they actually think they're doing the right thing? I have no clue. I waffle on it, to be honest. I mean, part of me says you have to know you're corrupt. You just have to. It's so obvious. But then, if they do, they're very convincing actors because they act like they believe what they're saying. I honestly think they believe it. I think that, this is just a small example. I heard this guy talking about in a podcast I was listening once. I can't remember who it was. But he was talking about, he basically lives in the D.C. class. And there's this bubble in D.C. with all the reporters and the politician staffers. And, they all live a certain way. Most are very wealthy. They live in the same communities. And so they did this study where they asked a bunch of people that are like involved in these communities, how many people do you know that smoke? And most of them couldn't come up with anyone. That's despite the fact that, like, I don't know what the numbers are, but a decent amount of people smoke. 20%, 20% in this country. Then you ask a poor person or someone who lives in Aurora or in any inner city neighborhood, how many people do you know that smoke? Dozens? Now that's, you're saying, what does that mean? It just goes to show this bubble we live in, right? If you're there, you think you're right. Like, you think, like, yeah, everyone hates Trump. He's a Nazi. He's Hitler. That's how everyone feels. That's not how everyone feels. All Hispanics hate Trump. They know that he's a racist. That is not how all Hispanics feel. And by the way, if you're a person that thinks everyone votes a certain way or should vote a certain way because of their skin color, you might be a racist. Just saying. I choose to look at people in the content of their character. Yes, I don't have a problem with saying, on average, this is how this population votes. That's fine. No problem with that. But if you get upset because Kanye sold out black people or Joy Villa because, they like Trump, you might be a racist. Just saying. So, I mean, it's just one outrage after the next, and I get frustrated because I feel like even the people, well, let me take it in this direction. I've seen a lot of people criticizing Fox News and Drudge Report lately that are Trump supporters for the direction they're going. So let me slightly defend Fox and Drudge in this sense. They're their private business. They can do whatever they want. Like, certainly I think we'd all agree with that. And I don't mind diverse opinions. In fact, I like that idea. Even though the media suck. Like, remember there was that famous clip that went viral of Jon Stewart making fun of the show Crossfire way back in the day on CNN. Tucker Carlson was on it. And the idea of the show Crossfire was like, you get a Republican dude and you get a Democrat dude and they just yell at each other about an issue. Now the format sucked because it wasn't a deep dive. That's why I like doing stuff like this. And I want to do interviews with more people, especially people that disagree with me. Because long form discussions are so much better. When you get on these, even if you have people that disagree, when you get them on a television show, they got 5 minutes. And so everyone's just trying to make, like, you can't really develop your argument in 5 minutes. It's tough. But at least there was an idea of having people with competing ideas. That I liked, We don't even get that now. Now it's just, CNN has a panel of 9 people that all agree Trump's the devil. Like, what is the good in that? You don't have anyone that can offer a counterpoint? And so I don't mind Trump having people that don't, or Fox having people that don't like Trump. I don't. The problem is that if you're going to do that, at least give warranted reasons. Don't spew garbage. And it's the same with the Drudge Report, right? Like, their headlines, at least 4 or 5 in the past week, have just been flat out lies. They had a headline that was like, Ukraine official says Biden conversation was prerequisite to call. That was a lie. That was Lyshenko that I talked about, who later came out and said he never said that. Plus, he was the one who publicly admitted to helping the Democrats. Let's just go to Drudge Report right now. Let's see what's on the top of their headline. Top line, Napolitano, and it's highlighted in red. Napolitano, Trump behavior is criminal and impeachable. Next, odd markings, ellipses, fuel doubts about rough transcript of Ukraine call. Top U.S. diplomat, crazy to withhold security assistance for political campaign. Dems demand test strategy, moderates in crosshair. Pence backs the president, finally. But do you see, they're only giving one side of the story. That's what's frustrating. So Drudge, I don't mind if they want to put that stuff up, but they ain't going to put crap about Biden. It's way down the list. It's all highlighted. Oh, Trump's a bad dude. Trump's a bad dude. And that's fine. Again, it's their right. They can do what they want. But who do we have left? I mean, it used to be we got Fox News. I've been saying this for years, by the way. Fox sucks too. Even if they're defending Trump, they suck. Most of the time. I like Tucker. I think Hannity's got good guess. And I think that Hannity's been right about what he's been talking about with Russia that a lot of people weren't. I think Greg Gutfeld's funny. Jesse Waters is okay, but that's about it. Oh, sorry, you're going to hear my dog barking now. She's a meathead. Hey, Dorothy, keep it down. I'm talking to people. Here, wait. I'll show you my moron dogs here for a second. Annabelle, there's Annabelle. Get out of my face. Come on. Okay, can you go back now? Sorry about that, everyone. They're meatheads. Let me get back up here. See what I deal with? I work how many days a week I work, and 70 plus hours a week. I come home, I'm trying to do all this stuff, and I still got 2 moron dogs that I'm fighting with the whole time while I'm doing it. Pretty good, huh? But no, even with the people that I'm talking about, like Fox, I've never been that impressed with many of them anyways. And one of the things that upsets me is, I feel like even with the people that you see, like, I'll tell you people that I think do pretty good. Bongino does pretty good. Mark Levin does pretty good. They're very smart, right? But, like, a lot of these people I see out there, even that are, like, Trump defenders, they're not making the right arguments. Like, Donald Trump's campaign needs to hire me, and I'm not going to be someone that would work for him and never not criticize him. I wouldn't do that, right? I'm country first. There are things Trump's done that I don't like. And let me go in that direction for a second, right? Like this impeachment crap, that's garbage. You're only helping the intel community. I can give you reasons to go after Trump, particularly if you're a Democrat. Here's the number one reason to go after Trump if you're a Democrat, right? Wasn't the Republican Party all about balanced budgets? And what happened with Trump? There's something good. Or you could just say, like, what have we done to curb the opioid crisis? You know? There's tons of stuff you could say. Now, I could defend those with Trump, too. But there are policy positions to attack Trump on other than he's the devil or he's a Nazi and he needs to be impeached. But on the flip side with the Trump people, I don't understand why they are always on the defensive. I talk to people. I've talked to Republicans and Trump-connected people all the time here in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm like, what is your like, for example, they'll be like, we're trying to reach young people. I'm like, what's your message? Well, can you hand out flyers? Yeah, I can hand out flyers, but I have a message for young people. Have you considered saying this? This is why you don't like socialism, young people, because when the deficit explodes, Bernie Sanders won't be around to pay it back. You know who's going to pay it back? Young people. When we talk about healthcare for everyone, the argument for healthcare is this, that we have a bunch of people that are using healthcare that aren't paying for it. And then we have a bunch of people that are using healthcare and paying for it. And we have a bunch of people that aren't using it and aren't paying for it. So there's 3 groups. Those using and paying, those not using and not paying, and those using and not paying. The problem is, those that are using and paying have to pay way more because those that are using and not paying aren't paying. So the way you balance that out is there's 2 things you could do. You can either make those that are using and not paying pay. We don't want to do that because the Democrats say those are poor people and you can't screw them over. Or you make those that aren't using pay. Right? Now, what group of people aren't using healthcare that often? Any clue? Young people. Now, you could say, but it'll be universal healthcare, it'll do this, it'll do that, blah, blah, blah. If that debt's going to be spread around, the people right now that'll get screwed ultimately and pay for it are the young people. Period. It's that simple. I told all my friends that when Obamacare came out. They were all college-aged. They said, free healthcare will be great. You know what they're telling me 2 years after Obamacare? I don't have healthcare, now I have to pay this stupid fine. Yup. Told you. But where's that message with the Trump people? You know, I tell them, they're just like, ugh. And with this impeachment crap. There's certain things I don't understand. How they don't, like if I was Jay Sekulow or I was Rudy Giuliani, every time I went on one of these shows, every single time I'd be like, let me read you this article from the Financial Times of August 2016. Here's a Ukrainian official saying that, yes, we are intervening in the election because we don't like that Donald Trump appears to be pro-Putin. He's admitting it in the financial, that's mainstream media, right? Right? He admitted that? What exactly was the 3-year investigation into Trump for again? Oh, don't worry there, Jake. I'll get to your questions. I just want to, I don't know if your audience was aware that, because your host said that was a Russia conspiracy theory. So, Why aren't they saying stuff like that every time? Or here's the letter that was written by these 3 senators. Before we talk about Trump here, let's talk about this letter. Oh, look, it does the exact same thing you're accusing Trump of. Huh. Here's Adam Schiff soliciting dirt from Russians trying to get nude photos. Every time, every single time, before they say, oh, what's that? You have a problem with Russian interference? Oh, let's see what the Mueller report says. Where did the information came from that was used to spy on Carter Page? Oh, Kremlin officials. And it was unverified and a lie. Now, what were you saying about being upset about Russian disinformation? How is this not being said every time, over and over and over again? Why isn't... I haven't heard anyone. Eventually, Rudy picked up on the fact that Shokin swore in an affidavit that he was told by Poroshenko that he had to bury the case into Biden's son, and because he didn't, that's why he was let go. Thank God Biden started weighing... Did you notice, too? And Giuliani was right when he said this. The first time Giuliani waved that affidavit around, all of a sudden, that's when they came out, Biden's team, and said, all these networks shouldn't have Giuliani anymore. Exactly. Exactly. And although Giuliani and me share some kind of raving lunatic qualities, I think I'm more coherent in being able to defend the president from these charges. Have you heard Giuliani or anyone talk about Hunter Biden's company's lawyer, John Buretta? I mean, this stuff's unbelievable. How is it? Because you have to understand.
Americans always want to know, how is our representatives in your country?
Sorry. You always have to frame the debate. You have to know what your opponents are going to say. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I find the affidavit from Shokin, who again is the prosecutor that Biden forced to be fired, I find that very persuasive. Not saying necessarily that Shokin's telling the truth, but that is actual evidence that warrants an investigation. Just like Hunter Biden receiving $50,000 a year from a company that the United States and the entire Western world said was corrupt. So corrupt that we had to fire the prosecutor looking into them. Hunter Biden receiving $50,000 a month from them when he has 0 qualifications warrants an investigation. There has been no investigation. Instead, we just get told, oh, it's all conspiracy theory. Lutsenko said there was no evidence that Hunter Biden did anything wrong. One, why is our FBI relying on Ukrainian opinions on what the evidence says anyways? And second, that's not what Lutsenko said. Well, in reality, it is what he said, but that's not the full picture of what he said. He also said, I acknowledge that these payments were received and I never got to investigate them. So if you ask me, have I seen evidence that proves Hunter Biden is guilty? I have not. I've seen evidence that warrants investigation, and I know that it hasn't been investigated properly, but if I'm being totally honest, I haven't seen the proof that he's guilty. I could speculate that he's guilty, but if I'm being reasonable and I'm acting as someone whose job would be to determine guilt or innocent, I could not stamp guilty and send that guy to jail from what I've seen. But I see that there's reason for an investigation. Oh, $83,000 a month, okay. But they'll say no. Your audience, the left will say no. All you have to do is give any reason, and this is something they'll always do. Anybody who has a conflict of interest or could be biased for their side, doesn't matter. They're legitimate, they're awesome, right? But anyone who could have a bias against their side, that person's always corrupt and we don't have to listen to a word they say. So it doesn't matter. Shokin could bring audio tapes, he could bring proof, and they'll say corrupt. We're not going to listen to him. We don't even want to see his evidence. Okay, then what about Hunter Biden's company's defense attorneys? You're not even going to ask them? And that's how you know that they're full of it. That's the real rub, right? They didn't even take the time to make up a freaking excuse. That's the most insulting thing, believe it or not. Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, board of directors on this Russian company. Ukrainian gas company. Supposedly the owner's corrupt. His lawyers go to the day that Shokin got fired. That company's lawyers call up the Ukrainians and say, hey, we'd like to talk to the new prosecutor. They say we can't today. 6 days later, they're in Ukraine. John Buretta is the guy's name. He's talking to the prosecutor. That prosecutor keeps a memo of the conversation that became an official record for the Ukrainian government. The Ukrainian government gave that official record to the reporter John Solomon. This interim prosecutor's memo says, that John Buretta, the defense attorney, who tried to contact him the day that Shokin, the previous prosecutor, got fired because Biden withheld $1 billion. 6 days later, he says this. I apologize. The U.S. officials that demanded this guy be fired for corruption were spreading disinformation. We know that your predecessor, Shokin, was actively investigating Burisma. We know that he was a good man. We know that it was Britain that screwed up this investigation. We would like to get you in contact with people at the State Department to kind of smooth this all over and come up with a result to this investigation. The media and the Democrats' response to that say, it's a conspiracy theory. It's been debunked. By the way, John Solomon that reported that's a bad dude. That's it. Now, even if you think this is probably garbage, if you're Jake Tapper and you're like, look, this story's probably garbage, wouldn't you reach out to John Buretta, the U.S. defense attorney for Burisma? Wouldn't you reach out and be like, dude, did you say this? And maybe Buretta will say, no, I didn't say it. And then you can at least lie or, stop your investigation and claim, well, we investigated and Buretta said he didn't say that. But they didn't even do that. They just said, nah, we don't have to listen to this. That's what's most insulting. You didn't do the bare minimum. You didn't even explain why we shouldn't listen to this guy. You just acted like it never came up. And Giuliani's not out there talking about this guy, this statement. No one is. John Solomon, but here's the problem with John Solomon, right? Solomon's an actual journalist. His job is to report what he found. That's it, right? He has integrity. So he's like, here's the facts. Here's my opinion on the fact, but you make up your own opinion. I'm just presenting facts because he's a good man. My job's not to be a journalist. My job's to look at this and say, what is the most likely thing that comes as a result of these facts? Or do these facts warrant an investigation in this sense? Of course they do. Any reasonably objective person would be like, yes, yes, yes. That warrants an investigation. If the Trump transcript that was a whistleblower from secondhand sources warranted an investigation, how does this not? But where is everyone? Where's Tucker? Where's Hannity? Where are all the people? Why am I the only one I hear yelling about Buretta all the time? Who am I? Like, if you get to meet me, I'm not like, I would say I'm a man of reasonable intelligence. I'll bet most of the people watching this right now, if we played Connect 4, I'd win 6 out of 10 times. I feel like I'm reasonably smart. I'm on the medium difficulty Sudoku puzzles. I do pretty well at those, but I'm no genius. I don't have resources that others have. I've never made more than $15 an hour my whole life. I'm constantly living paycheck to paycheck. I work 70 hours a week. I clearly don't diet and exercise as much as I should. So what are my qualifications that I could look into this stuff and come up with questions that I don't hear the people that are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to come up with? Here's another thing while I'm bragging about myself, right? I said on a live stream here last week, plus I had tweets saying this, that when I went through the whistleblower complaint, I said I found it extremely odd that whistleblower kept saying, this is unclassified. Top and bottom of every page, it says unclassified in all capital letters. He goes on to say, to the best of my knowledge, everything's here is unclassified. Then he has a paragraph where he talks specifically about if this would be deemed classified in the future. I feel that I would have to be explained to blah, 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 blah. And I said, that seems very odd. Almost like he wanted this information, he was writing it to either get to the public or to get to someone like Adam Schiff. And this would be used in the future as a defense for this person to say, it was okay me as the whistleblower to give this to Schiff because I didn't think it was classified. So I thought it was okay to give this information out. And why wouldn't he? Isn't that what James Comey did? Wasn't that the Comey defense? Well, I didn't know it was classified. I just assumed it was my own memos. So I was allowed to have it reported to the New York Times. Remember? I didn't hear anyone mention the fact. I still haven't heard anyone mention about this. Why would he go out of his way to say it's unclassified? Think about it. You're you're a CIA official. We know this person's CIA, right? And you're writing to your inspector general. And you're like, dude, I have questions about something that just came up. You're only writing to a person who has as high, if not higher, of a security clearance than you. So why are you going out of your way to be like, this is unclassified, this is unclassified, oh, and if it's classified in the future, trust me, it should have been unclassified. Why are you going out of your way to say that? It's almost like because you know you shared the info with someone. But no one mentioned it. Yeah, right. You were right. He did say, as is customary. Right? That's a separate point. But yeah, you're right. If Trump was trying to break the law, why would he handle the conversation in a customary fashion, where he had all the same dozen people were listening into the call? It just didn't make sense. It's kind of so, and I said that, and it's like, thank you for you people, for real, that listen to my live stream or that read my tweets and things like that. I really appreciate it. But it's hard to reach a big audience. And I just wish, I'm not saying I'm smarter than anyone. I just wanted someone to raise that point. Why isn't anyone asking about this? Is this odd? Is this how whistleblower complaints are usually written? I don't know. I don't have access to that. And there's all sorts of questions now that, for example, we have questions since we now know that the IG changed the forms, right? For those of you who don't know, the form that you used to see online used to say that you had to have first-hand knowledge. Now the form has switched to say second-hand knowledge is acceptable as well. Okay? That form is admitted by the IG that, whoops, we made a mistake with the old form. We changed it after this whistleblower complaint to reflect the law. Okay? So here's some questions I haven't really heard anyone answer. Will the IG be going back in the past 2 times of the Obama administration or to the Brennan, Comey, Clapper administration in the intel communities and be seeking whether or not their misinformation that they're admitting that they put out, right? Because their stance is this: oh, for years the legal statute didn't say first-hand knowledge was necessary, so it was wrong to mislead people that was the idea. So will they now be seeking out potential past whistleblowers who would have came forward about Obama or Comey or Clapper or Brennan, but thought they needed first-hand knowledge? There could be a whole trove of people that heard rumors about Brennan or heard rumors about Obama, but they were under the false impression you needed first-hand evidence. So what will they be doing to go and seek? They admitted they misled people. Isn't that odd? They misled people under the Obama administration. Here's another question. We know that this statement, the current one, was just drafted after the whistleblower complaint. The one before it was drafted, I believe, May 4th, 2018. Right? Okay, May 4th, 2018. But what did the one before that say? In other words, have we had these forms? Because you have to understand what these are. So if you want to be a whistleblower, you probably have a job, right? Let's say you want to file a workers' comp form. Or you want to file a workers' comp claim. They have a form at your company where they give you, and it gives you step-by-step what to do. That's what this was. It's like, I want to file a whistleblower complaint. Okay, here's your form that instructs you step-by-step. Here's how you know if you could be covered as a whistleblower. Here's how you know exactly what you have to submit and who to submit, etc. That's what this is. So how many... Did these forms in the past all say first-hand knowledge was necessary? Or did they say before, no, you could have second-hand, and then in May 4th, 2018, that form changed it? Here's why this matters. If throughout the past decade or two, they've all said first-hand knowledge was necessary, then it seems even more suspicious that we finally just changed it when this whistleblower complaint came out. Here's another question I haven't seen anyone ask. The law is very specific that the IG gets to determine whether or not something is of urgent concern or not. So in other words, the criteria is laid out for what could be urgent concern, but it's up to the discretion of the actual intelligence community IG to make the determination whether or not it's urgent. So for example, you could have a law that says, let's just take disorderly conduct. I was one time charged with disorderly conduct. Case got dropped, though. And I remember the cop, when the one cop wrote me up for it, and then the other cop told me to fight the charge at the station. And I was like, yeah, I didn't commit disorderly conduct. And he was like, well, technically you did. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, read the statute. And the statute in Pennsylvania is basically just like, you did anything that another member of the community could have found annoying, basically. And he's like, yeah, it's basically intentionally written so that it's up to the discretion of the judge. So in other words, if a cop pulls you over and they can't get you on anything else, they can just be like, look, disorderly conduct, your car was too loud. you used a curse word, whatever, right? So it's up to the discretion of the judge. In this case, you have a criteria outlined of what possibly could be of urgent concern. So it says the following things could be under consideration for urgent concern. But it's ultimately up to the IG to determine whether or not they meet that criteria. So why did the former IG feel that firsthand knowledge was a necessary component for them to find something urgent? Even if the legal statute doesn't say it. Like, for example, a judge might say, before I give someone a speeding ticket, for me it's a criteria that a cop actually saw them speeding. Even though it's not written in the law that had to be the case, I'm just not going to believe it, or I'm not going to bother to prosecute these crimes unless an officer actually saw it occurring, right? The same here. Just because it's not in the law just gives the potential for what could meet the criteria. It's not saying it's not saying the person deciding the criteria exactly what they have to take into account. So, for example, the law doesn't say any secondhand claim is considered urgent. It doesn't say that. It just says, here are the things that could be considered urgent. So clearly the past IG thought the only stuff worth evaluating are firsthand claims. Why? Why does the new IG think differently than the past IG? Now you might be thinking, well, this sounds really technical and stupid, but it's not, because think about it. The why gets to exactly why this is corrupt. The reason that the previous IG thought that is because we don't take gossip as reasons to shut down the government. That's why. It's that simple. It's the same reason that you can't use hearsay to prosecute someone. So even though it's not specifically said in the actual law statute, can't use hearsay, that doesn't mean that you can and it should be accepted. That's the point. And it's proven by the fact that the past IG thought the same way. They thought enough to include it in their actual form. We don't even want to hear it if it's just hearsay. That's what they said. But the law says I'm allowed to tell you hearsay. Sure, you can tell me, but don't even bother because I'm not going to say it's urgent. It's hearsay. If the person that told you this, that heard it firsthand, comes to me, sure, then I'll listen to him. That's what the past form said. Literally, that's what it said. It said, we're not going to take secondhand complaint. Whoever told you of that complaint can come to us and file a whistleblower complaint. But do you hear anyone saying this? No. No one's asking questions about this. Even the good people. And it's frustrating to me. Like, I try to come up with these points and... Uh-oh, my wife's here. Which is actually good news, because I think we're going out for dinner. But, Nah, I'm wrapping up. Wrapping it up. Do you remember that Chappelle Show skit with the Wrap It Up box?
Yeah, I
wrapping up.
purchased one on Amazon.
So yeah, so I should get out of here today, but I will be doing a live stream tomorrow at 2:30. I'm going to try to be doing them every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 2:30. Now there are some caveats. It won't be this Saturday because I think I have a wedding, and my work schedule is really crazy because doing home health care, it's not the type of job where, well, if someone calls off, no big deal. I'm basically the on-call person that I have to go if someone calls off. And there's been a lot of people taking vacation, so I will try my best. I know people have said that my YouTube notifications for live stream aren't coming up. So follow me on Twitter. I almost always try to put there if I'm going to do a live stream that day and when it's going to come up. And check regularly because I'm going to try to average at least one video a day. But tomorrow we'll probably go through more of this Ukraine stuff. If anyone has topics they'd like to hear me talk about, please do. I'm also looking for people to come on and talk to me about whatever. I'm in the process, and I don't know if he's watching now, but of talking to a gentleman who wants to get into a lot of conspiracy stuff about the Clintons and the CIA going back to the 60s. I'll admit that's not my strong suit, but I'm willing to have people come on and talk about anything as long as I don't, as long as it's not like crazy, what's the word I'm looking for, like criminal nature or something like that. But I'll listen to anyone. Not saying I'll agree, but I'll listen to anything. So, and I particularly would like to talk to people that disagree with me. If you know anyone in good faith, and I truly mean this, in good faith that totally thinks that Trump should be impeached, I would love to talk to them. I will not treat them poorly. I think my live streams show that. You could go back and check out live streams I did with a friend I met on Twitter named Basic Thoughts. He's a left-wing person. We met because we argued on Twitter for 6 hours one night. We've done 14, 16 hours of live stream videos, and I think even if you don't agree with me, I think you can see I'm pretty fair And I wasn't calling them names or anything. I thought it was a good discussion. So thank you, everyone. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And please try to share some of my info if you can. One, because I'm vain and I would like a lot of people to watch me. But second, even if it's not me, if it's not my video, make your own video and talk about some of this stuff. Do what you can, because it's important to understand this narrative is being totally controlled by the left to the point where they could just blatantly lie about stuff. The depth of their argumentation is, it's been debunked, it's a conspiracy theory. That's not an argument. And as long as they control that, your friends and family that aren't following politics, they don't know. They don't know how corrupt this is. So, make your own videos or, share mine, or, maybe you're more handsome than me and you could reach more people than me. I don't know. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it, and have a good one.